Okay.
He understands the progress. We just need to. Exactly. I'm sorry.
No.
Loving your colors.
What's going on around you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I should not. So you can. Without. But then I could require them to be at the training. I'm never very to feel we're not seeing this to you today.
Change. You want me to change it?
See how that goes. All right, everyone, thank you so much for your patience. It's gonna. Still know how hard it is to get people together and. Nice to have it all in the same room, just try to. The articles are coming around. What I just passed out is. What I passed out is kind of a. It's live. I can hear the record the word. It is recording. We are recording now. Okay, good. This is a first stab that took a while to try to cost out everything that was asked. So we tried to look at every article, see where we've already made had agreements and TAs, and total those costs up for spending, and then the most recent ask from the association and had a following the total that was.
Angela,
Yeah,
I just have a question. I don't think the owl is working. Is the
it
owl?
is. I see.
Is it? Oh, I
our
just don't see us.
No.
It's not
It's
connected.
not
to the TV.
projected,
Yeah.
no.
Okay,
I can see it on.
okay, all right. I just want to make sure before we got, sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but before we got too far into it, I didn't know. If other
It's, what'd you say, Eric?
We're definitely recording.
We are definitely recording.
Okay.
Okay. So this is a work in progress and this is our best estimates because we don't have exact numbers on some things. So feel free to push back on places where you maybe made the ask and it wasn't exactly what you were thinking. One area that we would need to already make a correction is our proposal back on 20. Salary article, 25, thank you. We are proposing a 4% in the last, this is reflecting our last proposal of 433. Our proposal would go up to 434, and that last number, Dennis is going to calculate what that would be and adjust it. So we'll have an update in that.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. So as we go through these, if you have any questions, we may be referring back to the sheet as we go through each of it.
Thanks. You know, the other thing that I would add as we're going through this is, I mean, we're definitely looking to make progress here and continue with some, what we feel like has been pretty good work to get through a lot of proposals to date. We're down to the hardest ones for us to bargain over. 24, and then the economics, those have always been the most difficult.
Most challenging for sure.
You know, we have a different viewpoint of the district's ability to spend than you do. I think that's evident from some questions about the presentation you gave last time and our proposal. So, I mean, I think that's reflected there. We are looking to be sustainable, not knowing what's going to happen in the next biennium. So I think we do have some differences in how we're approaching the budget or looking at the budget. I think another challenge for us is in that last proposal you had given us on salary, you had carried forward your same salary proposal. And I talked last time about how that puts us in a difficult position of being asked to move kind of in response to no movement. And we feel like we don't have a lot of movement left in our proposal. And so that does put us in a difficult spot. We have chosen to move in year 3. And when we get to salary, we'll talk more about this. We have chosen to move in year 3, pinning some hopes on what might happen in the next legislative session, that perhaps we will get better than historical increases to rent. So that's where we chosen to move. But we've also made I think a deliberate effort to avoid adding kind of incremental costs throughout the language pieces in Article 24. As we look at our costing sheet, we calculate already just more than $1 million of cost going into the things we've TA'd so far. And so for us, that's, as we look at where else are we adding costs in this contract, I think we're trying to emphasize and devote money towards the salary piece and not have costs occurring in little bits and pieces elsewhere, because that adds up. And when we get to the end of the contract, that's where, I think we can run into trouble. So, for example, when we'll get to in Article 24, you had proposed, I think, in that one place to go from 75,000 to 100,000. And we didn't pick that up. And you might say, well, $25,000, why not pick that up? And we have those conversations as a team. And quite honestly, we're just trying to avoid those little bits and pieces elsewhere in language, because I guess our perception is that's probably not where your highest priorities lay. I guess if you were to tell us different, we would have some additional conversation as a team. But so I just add that as some context. I think the other thing on Article 24, as we go through it, we bargained that article so extensively since I've been working with the district, including that last bargain that we went through. We had a very lengthy bargain that last go around where we really bargained on Article 24. It's a difficult article. I said last time that we chose not to bring changes to it or real significant ones, even though there are ones that we would have liked to have brought, because we were, I guess, wary of the fact that how much we had bargained that the last time around. And did we want to get it kind of pulled down into a in-depth conversation on 24 again? So that left us, again, in a difficult position, because we're left largely trying to maintain status quo, which means it's hard for us to show movement by giving up on things that we've proposed, because we simply haven't proposed them. And so I don't know if that, Eric, by the look on your face, that didn't really make sense.
No, I'm like funding what you're saying there.
Had we proposed further gains by the district, then at this point in the bargain, we could show movement by saying, fine, we'll return to current contract language. We'll give up on what we proposed. We simply didn't have those things available to us. So we're left maintaining current contract language, which makes it, feel like, well, you guys aren't moving on your proposal. And again, that's literally true, because we didn't have movement to give in the form of rollbacks or proposals the district was making. So, just again, want to put some context behind this as we walk through. So, again, this sheet is intended as a summary, to show, I think, that the significant impact of what your team is asking. When we get to the kind of bottom line of all of this, and we get to a total cost over the 3-year period of right around 34 million in your proposal, we don't view that as being sustainable. Like, whether it's literally affordable, in a 1 year, like year one, is year one literally affordable? Is there literally money there? Is a different question for us than, is it something that is sustainable over the lifetime of this contract and beyond? I think what we're trying to avoid is getting into a situation where this district is in a similar predicament as Portland Public or Salem Kaiser or some of those other districts where we're pushed to the point of having to do layoffs. And I think you pointed out last time, this district, we did things like that by budgeting this in a somewhat more conservative manner, in years. And I think think that's served everybody well to not go through that roller coaster of hiring and laying off and hiring and laying off, and we would like to avoid that very much. So, you see that over the 3-year period. It shows it as the parties being about $14 million apart, although that number on our side will go up slightly because it doesn't reflect the change in our salary proposal in year 3. So it's gonna still be somewhere in the, 13 million plus range that we're apart over those 3 years. So again, just kind of a 10,000 foot view of what we're thinking. But now we can go through the individual articles and kind of get more in depth on some of the issues.
Right, we update this before we move on.
Yeah. What's that?
Can we update this before we move on?
We can, if you guys want to take a quick break, I mean, we can print out new ones of
No,
those.
I just write it down.
Oh, Dennis, do you have okay, awesome, yeah,
One thing.
yeah,
So, year 3 at 4% is $6,002,277. 6,002,277.
gonna ask if you can just read the exact number. Write it down.
600277.
Question about the insurance. It looks like the calculation that you did, the cost of the insurance times the membership, that's per month.
Dennis, is that per month or is that additional cost over term cost?
It's the total cost of our proposal versus your proposal, right? So we can see in 25, 26, we're $2 up. I'm just looking at the 1575.
Yeah.
Times 650, that's per month. So that would need to be multiplied by 12.
Yeah, and you're right, I think what that does show is our proposals are different in some key respects, but cost wise, very close. to one. Yeah. I echo what Angela said, if you see things in this as we go through, keep bringing them up, because our primary goal is to have this be as accurate as possible. And again, since our last bargain, we've been trying to put this all together, and it's a lot of moving pieces and it's a lot of calculation. So we're not trying to be disingenuous. So if there are pieces, certainly bring them in.
And the very last one, it would be 50 staff times $500. Not 50, because that's the stipend.
Yeah, thank you.
So it'd be 25,000 instead of 2,500.
Where's that at?
So very
My question is on those total cost numbers that you guys have there.
Yeah.
That's the total additional cost? Because almost everything on here is an additional cost with the insurance.
I defer to Dennis on that.
So like, you look at like the increase in salaries, you're not putting in the total salaries of the unit. You are putting in the total insurance cost of the unit.
Should just
And
be
not
the
an increase.
Help us to clarify this as we go through the proposal to reference back to this, to some of the changes.
I think
I'm just trying to think process wise, how we can kind of look at the changes and then.
And I'm making a list of questions here. And we'll modify this as the day goes on. So like here's the point being in 29. Is insurance represented by, is not being represented by total cost, or is?
It is.
It is.
But nothing else, but nothing else.
Not the change in cost.
Right.
Got it.
Everything else seems to be a change in cost.
That's a good point.
Yeah, thanks.
Not that we're far apart, but it does add to the total, right, at the end.
Fair enough. Yeah.
We're shaving off millions. It's gonna be a substantial difference.
Thank you. Okay.
Good catch, thanks. Let's start with 24, just because it's the lowest number. So we looking at a workday, one length of day And we struck that and tried to reword. Come up with some different language that we thought would get at what we heard you saying. Counselors need time to. I'm sure this is the right one.
Yep.
There's work that they need to get done, and oftentimes counselors are taken up with supporting kids and they don't get to the work that they actually have to do, which is 504s or the paperwork or the non-student work time. So we put that into C4. Can we go to C4? Come to that.
Up to page 9. Yeah, page 9.
Page 9.
Yep.
Which says. Principals will work with counselors to ensure they have identified non-student contact time, to complete the required paperwork and other necessary job duties that we are proposing. We feel like that also honors the flexibility for the counselor and doesn't lock them into a schedule such as they don't have students necessarily that teachers might have. I think that Tracy proposed that last time, where there needs to be some flexibility between the principals. Locking them into it. In a day. Not anything here.
Question. One of the primary reasons for the piece was not necessarily locking people into a schedule, but certainly protecting their schedule from just changing it on a whim. So what my question would be is, what could we make sure we do to know that that schedule isn't just going to change on a day-to-day basis?
And we're not looking for an expert.
Yeah,
I mean-
yeah, I think part of it is. It doesn't feel like it fits in length of day. So we'd like to move it to reasonable schedules. And let's kind of unpack the whole thing as we get
Understandable.
there. Yeah,
And we put that similar language in right above at the top of page 9. Which falls under number of case managing students with disabilities or IEPs.
6.
And actually, it's not under that, sorry, it's a new,
Right, the new number.
right, the 504 section. This principals work with 504 case managers to ensure they have identified non-student contract time.
But we can continue.
It kind of is.
So,
That's already,
That
yeah,
is-
I think it's great. Page 2. And B, striking the and will be identified in the work year calendar. I think we just had some questions about that. It wasn't striking for striking's sake. I think we just wanted to know more about what isn't already there in the calendar. Early and or late arrival days for students may be designated by administration and will be identified on the work. Is the late start days, which should
I don't
already
think it's
be
changing
there.
practice, but
We were wondering, is there something
so the.
that's not happening now that you guys are after? Or you're trying to just memorialize what is happening now?
to my knowledge, the Wednesday late starts are already provided to staff members at the start of the year. It said these are the Wednesday late starts. And so no, we're not looking for change of practice. We just want to.
And there's very few exceptions to Wednesday being a late start, right? It's like the PSAT at high school, it's during finals week.
And the day before Thanksgiving.
And so, and it's really a high school centric
Yeah.
thing, so. Okay. There's not elementary or middle school Wednesdays that are not late starts. Okay,
And again, I mean, primarily for us, the reason that we want it is that it's listed elsewhere. Start is for people who want to flex their days. They can't flex those days. They need to show up. Yeah, it's just people know.
I've also seen them appear different ways depending upon who the building administrator is. Sometimes they've created like their own calendar, right? And then they've got like late starts over here, and then they've got testing over here, and it's just like, if it was all like on, and eventually, like, it seems like it gets there, like,
Well, but
Would-
I guess for me, I'm thinking it's the parent calendar. It's
Could be.
the parent calendar that is our main communicator of this is a late start Wednesday, and that's where the difference for high school shows up. So for me, it's that calendar. It's not all the other building ones because you know, right? You know,
yeah, I don't know.
it's the calendar that's
That, I think this gets to one of the questions we had was when it wrote work year calendar, we were like, what is
What
the
is
meaning
that?
by that? But I think what I'm hearing you say, you just want a centralized place that staff see and can access at the beginning of the year where they can see what are all the designations for different Wednesdays. So it's not a surprise and it's all in one place, which that's not what you're asking?
It's not the designations of the type of how the time is used. It is literally, is this a late start Wednesday?
That's how I read that too.
And
Is that
every
your
Wednesday is
intent?
except for the 4 at high school.
Was your intent just to know when is there a late start Wednesday, or was it to know what is occurring on those late start?
I mean, I currently get, right now, I get what you're saying. So my building, we put out at the start of the year, this Wednesday is gonna be a member collaboration day, this Wednesday is gonna be, we're doing collaboration and PD day. So I get that at the start of the year. That's not what this language is saying. This is primarily about lectures. So when are the CNI days and other things listed, right? So the beginning of 24. Yeah, it says already, right? I mean, on the page of the principal, there you go. So they already have notified folks that, hey, this is the day you have to be here. Having that on a set. When's the CNI day gonna be? When is it? Means where do I look to go find those things? For that would be handy. And I think a lot of those are.
Good to know.
I think there are definitely some buildings that I've been at that do a really good job of laying it out. Like, really, this is when what each Wednesday's plan is going to be.
All right, moving on, with that understood. The next part, September, October, April, the Wednesdays immediately following winter and spring breaks were struck. And I have in my notes that, you know, is this a matter of maybe, I think Tracy, you talked about it, moving teacher time to different points of the year? Be open to. If it's the times of the year that teacher times are happening that we're opposed to, or additional, and the question of what is the difference between. Yes, I would like to know what's the difference between member directed and collaboration time.
Member directed, they can grade, they sit there and decorate their classrooms, if that's what they do.
What kind of
Make copies.
Yeah, sure.
So additional planning time, the collaboration time, what happens?
Is when we can assign, the admin can assign them to work on. Not copying it.
But the- So it's more technical type stuff that. Making copies or individually, it's not for you. Collaboration would be more around. Planning, but team.
It's a content in some way, shape, or
The intent we heard at the table, the way that it's written for those collaboration days is it's for the classroom, it's for instruction, assessment, standards, but it's supposed to be collaborative, working with your PLC, your curriculum area on those specific. Not to be used.
And so member directed, just for my own, would be
Yes,
like what you would do during.
you can contact parents, you can go make copies, you could sit. Honestly, I end up using it just like my collaboration days for myself, but that's me. I have the autonomy professional freedom to take care of my responsibilities in the way that I see fit to get the work done.
Those are also days that a teacher could flex. Designated start time. And put more time at the end of the day.
And then stay late.
Thank
So
you.
can I just like, overall, we do not feel like we're in a position to give up time that we have to support collaborative efforts, to make sure teams are able to meet on those collaboration days. And just kind of as the reminder of how we got here, it was by restructuring a whole lot of time, right? It was around, Mark, I've got some of our notes of all our calculations, right? Where it was really about how do we restructure time to use it differently? And so we're not in a position to give up more of those days. And we feel like we've kind of done some trade-offs. So if there's some time that then we would gain back in a different way, then that might be a different conversation. But we spent so much time working on this last time to get to this point where we felt like it was we TA'd the contract or approved the contract, so it was mutually agreed upon in terms of how we traded out that time, which included staff meetings. It included some changes with CNI and SNA days. It made changes to the middle school minutes. There were some Wednesdays that are teacher directed. And the question I did wonder is one of the things that we did in selecting February and May as the months where we would add a teacher directed day was the message from you all with the calendar. This is the parent calendar actually. But with this calendar on when different days fell so that members had an opportunity every 6 to 8 weeks to have some of that bigger chunk of time. So that's why those 2 days were selected. If there's interest in moving those days to a different time, I think we'd be open to that conversation. But just to kind of go back a little bit in terms of how we got where we're currently at, I just wanted to kind of bring that back to the conversation.
Why do you feel that collaboration days are future?
I think a lot of it is that we can ask people to get together to collaborate, and that doesn't always happen. There are certainly teachers that do that, and there are staff that choose not to do that. My personal experience, and principals can speak to this too, is that it was really challenging for some members when they wanted to collaborate with their team members on those days. And because they were flexing their day, there was never a time for them to collaborate together. So it was about being intentional about trying to get people in the same room, because we really do value collaboration. We want that to be part of the practice of our district. So that's, I don't know what Ryan or Sean would add to that.
You just said that people could flex their days on collaboration days, so how does it solve that?
No,
They can't.
On the teacher directed days, they could flex. Yeah, and often do.
the only thing I would say is, understand and agree. We went through and did a lot of calculations to ensure that we were swapped to get to those times. But we put forth many proposals that cost, right? And we have looked through, like, we started off with the 4-day contact week with another day that we would split for member rep. We heard that you were not overly interested in that, and so we backed off of that. This is free. Now it's free. This is a zero cost thing for the district. So we heard the concerns around money, asking for things that may be more financially difficult for you guys to do. We're hearing from our members that workload is killing them, right? I mean, that they are dying of the roles that they have. And we're trying to find ways to get them a reduction in work or an increase in the amount of time they have. So understand that's hard. These aren't just random grants for time. Folks are telling us they need the time to do the things. So that's our.
This is no cost to instructional time either.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. It's
And
They're
well,
close.
the cost of adding time that's not for collaboration when that is a value does become, so then that's sub time, that's release time, that's HTW. That's where some of that time, if we're needing people to have the opportunity to collaborate with each other, starts to come from. And so is there a direct cost? I would agree with you. Are there some inadvertent costs that could be associated with that? I certainly believe that there are.
I mean, again, though, I would just push back on that a little bit and say that one of the main intents of the district directed Wednesdays was for collaborative planning. So the time set aside, district directed day. And you can see it's in the contract, it says for collaborative planning. And that has entirely been pushed out of the district time onto what I'll call members. And that was not the intent. Was Wednesday late. What's supposed to be happening was collaboration on district equipment.
I think that time just got moved, Mark. I'd go back to what
Correct. It got
Tracy
pushed out.
said. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like we made a grab and took member directed time. It just shifted from Wednesdays to other places. And so one of our challenges here is we struck a bargain last time we bargained, like 2 years ago. And you guys are kind of saying, we want all the stuff that we got out of that bargain. Now you give up the stuff that you got out of that bargain, and we're not gonna do that. I mean, that was a hard back and forth that we had to maintain that collaborative time, but make sure we weren't giving up member directed time. We repackaged it or swapped it out.
Agreed.
And yeah,
So
I would just like to give like a building admin perspective, because I do agree with you in terms of the value of time. And we, as a building administrator, we gave up PD time. And we gave up some of our time on the SNA days, right? And that's something that as building administrators, we don't feel like we have enough of, right? We don't have enough time with our staff, and you can agree or disagree with it. But that's a reality, right? So like there were gives and takes with that in terms of the time, right? There was a sacrifice that building administrators with the last bargain.
Our proposal doesn't touch what you guys have right now for PD collaboration, the PD days calendar.
But we already had given up. Like that time was already given up to make
Like
room for this.
I use all of my staff meetings as collaboration time. So having that staff meeting go away to become time for teachers to collaborate was a reasonable trade, because that work could still happen in a more organic way. So we do want staff to have time to collaborate with their teams.
You have to realize, like Mark said, there's so many staff that feel that they have a lot on their plate and don't get things done. Those people that wanted to collaborate before has collaborated. And putting people on collaboration teams, those same people aren't going to collaborate. So the people that are collaborating now carry that extra load and the weight of the people that are just sitting in those teams doing nothing because you have products to produce. And they'll show up because they're gonna get marked off, or administrators are gonna check in the window to see that they're there. But other staff members are just carrying the dead weight on their team. And so all that's happening is that more is being placed on those that were already doing what they were doing before, and they're carrying that extra. And those staff members are and asking for more time.
And is that conversation happening between members? And is that conversation
You're
happening?
not gonna
with the
change the
administrators?
members that
Well,
are not going to. Because, yeah.
So one of the
I
things
think we want to create a
specifically,
culture of collaboration.
one of the things we specifically heard from our membership is that last year it was like the first time, right, we got to try out this collaboration Wednesdays for the whole year. And what we kept hearing from people is that waiting 6 weeks to get an extra 40 minutes or whatever it is, right, was just absolutely silly. And that they needed time every 3 to 4 weeks. So that's where we went and we said, well, what if we split it and we kept a collaboration, right? And we kept the 2 district directed, but we had a member directed Wednesday every month, one. every month so that folks can look at it on the calendar, right? They know that it's happening. And they know that if there's something they can't get to this week and it's not super urgent, but they need to get it done, they can just, mentally bump it for that upcoming Wednesday. And for people to have to wait 6 to 8 weeks, to use your quote, it was just. They just weren't able to get it. The time, placing that 6 to 8 weeks meant that things just weren't happening. Right? The thought they had, the idea of, oh, I should do this, or they saw something, right, in a PD, okay, how am I gonna figure this out? And then having to wait until the second week of October, when they finally get a bonus 40 minutes to try and do this, it just doesn't happen. It's on a sticky note buried on their desk somewhere, just goes in the trash, right? Because they didn't have a teacher directed Wednesday in the month of September.
But what they did pick up then was staff meeting time in that month. That then is theirs to do some of what you just described, right?
But I think Sarah's point is like that big chunk of time is really valuable in a way that, you're gonna get something done that you can't get done in 40 minutes. So yeah, if I go to a PD, a building PD, right, my principal suggests making some changes to a system in my classroom. That Wednesday morning, when I have that big chunk of time, is when I'm gonna do that. That's when I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna look at this, doing in my classroom, okay, these are the changes I made, just I need to make these copies and these charts and put this up and these materials because I'm first graders and they need lots of hands-on things. Like I'm doing that on a Wednesday morning. I'm not doing it on Tuesday. Right, so having that, it's, to Cyrus's point, that big chunk of time, having that once a month is what's needed in order to effectively implement what we're being taught in all the PD that you are.
I also think that having staff pick their collaboration groups would be beneficial at high school level. There are times when a high school teacher is put in a collaboration group for a singleton class that they're teaching. And instead of a collaboration group they have 5 classes, 5 sections, and that's not their collaboration group. They're put in a collaboration group for 1 section. And that makes no sense. Why not be working for the 5 sections developing group? And then staff. So instead of working for the main class, working, and we hear that a lot. Why am I developing curriculum for a class that I self-teach?
I think we understand your position. I'm just hoping that you also are considering ours.
I think you're trying to get a middle ground, right? We're going to take all of them back, so that's why there's still some in there. I think once a month, we thought was a reasonable compromise, getting teacher directed time once a month. And you guys still get, you get your PD days done, you get collaboration days.
But you would still be keeping all of the district time that we gave up in the last bargain and keeping that as individual teacher prep.
I'm gonna point out that when it comes to that time, the staff meetings that happen, they primarily happen during weeks where there was member directed Wednesday. Not all levels have staff meetings. So some of our levels already had, well, they don't have much planning time in the morning anyway. That's why the staff meetings weren't happening. But they just lost a chunk of prep time that was significant and large to be able to get the work done that they needed. And the complexity of the work that we're being asked to do now is pretty significant. And it takes a lot of planning time. And the more planning time, the better the instruction. That's really where our stand is.
I have a short answer. Yeah. We're asking for that.
I mean, you can understand why that's a difficult proposition for us to do. If we had come to you this bargain and said, we want to keep all the Wednesdays that we gained last time as collaboration time, but oh, by the way, we want to take these other days that were given in exchange and we'd like those to be district directed. I think you guys would be looking at us like, wait a minute, that's unreasonable for you to be kind of trying to unravel the last bargain in that way and keep the benefit of your bargain and get what we gave in exchange. So that's a tough ask for us. You know, and also not just from a principle of the matter, like that was the deal that was struck, but I mean, it's a value on collaboration time as well that sounds like we have a little bit of disconnect on. I don't know if there are ways to make that collaboration time more valuable. Stacey, you're saying having more teacher input on who you're collaborating with or the teams that you're in. You know, so I mean, I guess I'd be open to hearing how that collaboration time can be more valuable. I'd be more open to that than we want you to just give it up entirely.
It was a conversation. I think that's a valid example you brought up. To be just perfectly honest, like it's a valid example you brought up, right? You can't, it's hard to force someone to collaborate and you can't. And if that person doesn't want to be in the group that you put them in, right? It seems like that's also a missed collaborative opportunity to figure out where's their middle ground, right? Because hopefully the person's going to be in a group that they feel is effective for them.
Brian, I want to possibly characterize it in my frame of mind for what Stacy's saying is that these folks are being frequently placed into groups for which the work doesn't apply to what work they need to get done for their curriculum area. We're talking folks who are singletons, have, you know, specific curriculum areas they're teaching. This especially goes on in high school. I know it happens for Mark at the middle school level, but folks who don't have a curriculum partner that's teaching the same material. And to ask them to collaborate on things that don't apply to their classroom area is just, it's a phenomenal waste of time for them. And it makes them angry and it frustrates them. And it's not a good use of money in regards to district time that you are paying folks to sit down and work. It's not good use. That's the whole.
Would that go to that next piece that?
For Black.
No,
You
just,
ready to move on?
no, I'm not,
So.
sorry. We're still on.
Land, the time.
Really, just that second piece, we did strike the building level, kind of for what you're, along with what you're saying.
It's always.
Restricting it to a building level collaboration as far as, we have our specialists, our special education teachers who sometimes are singletons in smaller buildings in elementary school, for example, or our PE teachers, our music teachers who really get more value in collaborating with folks across the district who share their content area. So we were reading this as shall meet in building level administrator for planning for content. And sometimes it's not the principal who is going to be able to organize our music teachers across the district. It needs to maybe be a different administrator, not an administrator.
Like, I think middle school is a great example. Our middle school administrators have identified times where they do have a lot of that cross-building collaboration happening for a lot of their singletons and feel that that's been a pretty successful piece of the model. So I think that's part of it. I think it's worked well for CTE teachers and others that have kind of gotten together for.
They can't meet cross-building, right? I mean, honestly, this comes out of spec. Right, we're hearing from our spec teachers that they want to collaborate with the teachers in their building about their kids. We're hearing from our members that they want to collaborate with the spec teachers about the kids. They're not having time to meet now, right? And they, both sides, view the ability to collaborate about the kids and the instruction going on in the classroom for those kids would be a big gain.
I think,
And say, what
I
are they?
think building level, that doesn't mean that people can't meet, like Mark is saying, right? A building administrator could say to a music teacher or whoever, you're gonna go meet with this other people, right? Like, if you're aware that there's this meeting happening, building level administrator can still say, go and do this thing, right?
So building level administrator in this, for your proposal, could tell sped teacher, you're meeting district-wide with your.
Yes, it's about who's
Building level
communicating.
administrator established groups,
So
so.
then your staff, they could feasibly state for the year. this is your group.
We would hope not.
We would hope not.
I'm just saying, I'm extreme and on one, and
I'm extremely good.
I know you do. Donna, did you have something or did you? This is around spec. We really, from my understanding, this has risen up from one specific group, one specific building in special education.
That is my understanding.
Yeah, it hasn't come to my attention about any other groups, and so I would,
And there's a whole other list of collaboration days where they can meet with their grade level, subject level content, be part of that collaboration group.
so that's why we struck it.
Reading it differently also. I mean, is it as, I was reading it and I guess there's different intent. As the members shall meet in administrator established building level groups. So that the group had to be building level, but now if I'm listening to your description, it's it's a building level administrator
Who's
who's
communicating.
creating or
Who makes the
communicating, which
decision.
communicates.
Which is what we thought it always was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So we were
and I
surprised, we were surprised by some of the interpretations last year and how building administrators were like, oh, well, I'm not in charge of that collaboration group. It's coming out of this other office, right? And it was like, wait a minute, I thought everything was coming from building administrators about the collaboration Wednesdays. So,
But I actually think the communication is probably clearer when it does come from special ed, or when it does come from RSLE for DLI, or when it does come from Liz Mackey coordinating something for CTE, because those are the people that are regularly communicating with staff about a variety of things. The days that happens are pre-identified. And so if that's where the missing piece is, I think that can happen, but our administrators know when that's gonna happen. So I don't know that it's helpful
I think part of
for
it is
you to
also.
communicate to all those different groups.
Sorry, yeah, sorry. Part of it is also, like, there are times, so as a specialist, right, when I worked as a reading specialist, there were times when it was helpful to be with other reading specialists. But there were times when it was helpful for me to spend that Wednesday morning going to check in about a bunch of kids with a bunch of teachers. And so then if there's a grade level team happening and they're doing something specific for collaboration and I'm supposed to be meeting with, I'm like assigned to a different collaboration group, but that's not necessarily what I need in that moment. I think part of it is also just that when all these things are pre-scheduled for the whole year out, it doesn't give us the flexibility to address needs that arise at the moment. And so then it's like, oh, I was really hoping to meet with Amanda and Carrie about their group of kids that I have this reading with them now, but I have to go to job like this week, which means that meeting now isn't gonna happen, and that's because PD, and I might not be able to meet with them for another 2 weeks.
So then what is the recommendation so that those reading specialist conversations can happen? Because it can't be person by person, I can go this week and not that week, because then you may not ever have everybody all in one place. So what's the recommendation?
But I think that's our struggle with the collaboration days in general, right? Like in a lot of elementary buildings, that collaboration group of specialists is a PE teacher, a music teacher, a resource teacher, a reading specialist, and an EML teacher all in one room. And what exactly are we doing? Right? When in reality, so I often got benefit out of meeting with our resource teacher, but not necessarily for a whole lot of time, because then she and I would connect and then we'd say, oh, okay, you need to go talk to these kids or talk to these teachers and teachers. And we didn't have that. We didn't.
And
Uh,
that's.
Do you feel like you could have that conversation with your administrator though, to say, hey, I really need to meet with third grade today? Like, where is that conversation?
Actually, right? And so, but that's a case by case basis, but that's not what the contract is necessarily protecting. So that means that there are administrators who could say, nope, you need to stay with your collaboration team. Right? It's not that flexibility. I could have that conversation with my administrator, and that's depending on, so again, but that's not a guarantee for other people in other buildings who maybe don't have a relationship with.
But I think for me, that doesn't mean take away the model. It means that then maybe there's some communication that needs to happen. That's a different solution than just not.
But it still just feels like if we're forcing people to collaborate, again, we're forcing people to meet in groups that are helpful to Stacey and Eric's point. Okay.
Mark, sorry.
I mean, we thought that communication with your principal better understand what's going on in the building, how these two people meeting would be a good use of their time. Right? Not that the district can, but so I think the fact that, you know, you're locked in to these meetings that may or may not be used for you, like my collaboration again, right? I teach seventh grade science, which is the thing. And almost all of my collaboration days, we meet at 6, 7, 8 grade science. We don't teach the same thing. So what is it?
I have lots of.
There's so many.
No. But,
Yes.
it's the flexibility in the grouping, and, you know, I mean, we had many discussions about this last year. About what goes on in those meetings and the flexibility of the grouping. We're looking for ways to make it more useful for our members,
Mhm.
and I'm sure you are as well. So, I mean, just understand
I
that.
think that's a conversation that we can have. We may collaborate that preparation time. He's told that's not. Yeah, that's not what's reflected here, but I think if we can shift to what's happening in those collaboration times is not working for every member. We have to figure that part out. I want to just, if we can get through,
Yep.
And then I think it's an important conversation, but it's not going away.
That's why we have all day, right?
I know.
All right, so next page, we struck triple I and C, and I think we've been pretty clear about that. Proposals, for triple we're not interested in lessening time for students, student contact time, on those early release and late start days, the first work day after winter break. And then non-instructional Fridays, as we've stated before, anytime we're changing the work week or impact the Division 22 is not going to be appropriate for it to come from one units, in one contract. That would proper process would go through the school board and support then direct. She is a small committee and go. Doesn't say 4-day work week, but it says
This is brand
non-instructional
new.
Friday.
This is brand new language that we brought.
Yeah.
Right, it says non-instructional Friday. So, maybe,
Triple I.
no,
C. Triple I is brand.
Gotcha, yeah,
2 days.
And C is brand new.
Right,
for
but I
sure,
think
it's
that's,
still.
Yeah.
So that's the part we're not interested in lessening student contact time, and then the non-instructional Fridays. Or directed. Or directed that impacts the community and. Occupied staff. Students and families, so. I start with that one. Read to the language about the, page 4, read to your language with the full day and half day grading, progress reports to be performed remotely to do that. Which we may consider now that I'm looking at it, in MOUs that we've written, we kind of use the language of member's choice. Instead. Even put that, read that. And Brian touched on number 3 earlier, that we are sticking with the 75,000 for the school instruction assessment learning fund. Really, because we're trying to take money wherever we can. There, page 5.
Can I ask a quick question?
You can, for sure.
Do we know what we spend now of the 75? Can we get that number? Because it's allocated.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer, and I'm not sure, because that ATTW, how we
different buildings do different things. Sometimes it's HTW,
Be sub
sometimes it might be a contract, sometimes it might be sub days.
That would
I mean,
be, it would be tricky to exact number, but we can work on that. Only one change on page 5. D. Your proposal was the MA step 1 of the salary schedule, and we're proposing $35 an hour. MA step 1 is
I think it was 34 or something.
very
It's on your
close.
documentation.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very close. You'll see that we're trying to be consistent, where we have that $35 an hour, just,
Trying to use that as a.
trying to use that as a common base. And part of that reasoning is that we'll have the flexibility in future contracts to not be locked into a certain number. Want to increase it, we certainly can negotiate that in future contracts, but
There's several places in our T8 articles where $35 was agreed upon already. Like councils, the like first one that comes, so there were 3 or 4 different places where it seemed like that number. So that made sense.
it's predictable. No changes on 6, I think we're agreeing to their language. Page 7. I think that we agreed to that schedule language. I think we did.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And, the cost of the 30 minutes, the impact of the 30 minutes and 25. We
Sean had asked it.
talked about the impact. Seems small of 5 minutes.
On your cost.
Yeah.
There's a
That's
cost.
understood by us. I think, the impact. I
Yeah.
think we understand.
We're not currently providing that at some buildings.
Correct.
And so we do be an FTE ad to create that.
More special.
Perfect. And then the same on the cost for next page.
Can I simplify for my brain, your intent in that high school prep meeting is just to go back to current health?
Yes, and if I didn't cross or change
Like
something,
that.
that it's a little,
Wait a second, Brian's okay with keeping,
04.
04.
I don't like it. Relinquishing that quest.
I guess technically we'd be happy to.
I think there should be a clause that when the last of us is still at the bargaining table, who bargained that day, then it has to go away.
Ooh,
I have a goal.
I don't know if you need any explanation for that, except for the cost would be very great, and we're ready to talk about the impact of the block schedule. Folks really wanna go over that. I know there were some. Maybe it was prior to me being here, but impacts of that.
I mean, the financial impact is significant and it's listed there as well. And I think the other thing for those who are on the committee, right? I mean, it's one thing to figure out on paper when you are actually looking at needing to add point this in this area, that it doesn't always even work on paper that way, right? Because you need to be able to hire at least a 0.33. You're not gonna just hire 0.17. So the cost impact is significant. Having it in the contract where it can be required, and this is someone, I mean, I was on the committee. I personally love the idea of a block schedule. To be totally honest, there were some on the committee that felt like seeing kids every day was better. We talked about attendance and, in a block, if you miss the right 2 days in a week, you might miss the whole class, right? So I don't think anybody felt the block was like perfect, but we all felt it was better. It was just very expensive. And especially if it's built into the contract and we look at needing to cut money down the road, I hate the idea that we might have to at some point cut elementary or middle school positions to keep a model at the high school level. I just don't think a type of schedule should be written into the contract.
Was there any conversation with building principals in terms of like, hey, what would it look like if your master schedule was? How many more sections would you add? What are we talking about? Are we talking like, is it enough that we hire a math teacher, or now are we looking at like we need a math/science teacher? Like, was this?
I did it for my building.
Sure.
That's on a very small
Yeah.
scale. And I will also acknowledge the impact of the singletons is much bigger in mine. So you can't
Correct.
just multiply my scenario and
Yeah.
get Gresham-Barlow. My understanding was that Tim and Carla did do that work.
That's what I
and did-
thought.
And did look a little bit at that when they were figuring it out.
That's what I thought. I didn't know if the current building principals had been spoken to with regard to this proposal or.
There a bigger change now? I don't know what the difference would be. Would there be a big difference between the time y'all did this before and the current ones?
Well, so the current master schedule is based on students taking 7, and under a block, students would now be able to take 8.
Right, but when you guys had the committee,
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to see if the information that we have from when you had the committee would be any different. Than we tested.
I don't believe the information is different. I was specifically saying, were the 2 high schools, the administrators consulted in terms of, hey, take a look at your master, play around with this a little bit. What would it look like if you offered students 8 instead of 7,
And
right?
I think that did happen.
Yeah, I mean, the principles have also changed, right? I know Bruce, who's.
The principles have
with
changed.
everything
So-
financial.
Yes.
Looked at it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm. Do you have, I don't know. That's right.
No, I just have the costing sheet that was done then. It has it. I mean, that's what our math is based
Right.
on, was after the site visits and then difference.
And I was also on both committees, right? I don't ever recall seeing anything specific about like, okay, this is how many more sections we're going to need, right? Which would, of like subject areas, like, oh, we need to offer 5 more periods of math. We need to offer 4, you know what I mean?
But you remember when we visited McDaniel,
Yep.
right? Like that was a pretty powerful thing to go into a school that's about the same size as Gresham.
Yep.
And then here they had almost double the number of licensed physicians.
Yep.
It was like, are you kidding me?
Right.
Right, so that I think gave everybody a little bit of pause in terms of the cost.
And that's not just reflective of the box.
Absolutely,
But yes.
agreed. They had a whole different funding structure,
Yeah.
they got
It
levies, so
made
you're,
us all remember prior to 2007.
yeah. Agreed,
Well, it would
agreed.
be interesting to look now, just because when we looked at the schedule, I mean, it was also typical for a lot of our juniors and seniors to still take pretty much a full load,
Yep.
maybe take an early release or a late start, but now we have seniors who are taking half schedules. And juniors who are taking 2 of the early
2
release
releases.
and a late start. And so that being factored in, what would that look like? Because it's quite difficult for seniors not to take the whole loads. Or that was the case. That changes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've seen a pretty significant increase. in Seniors and some juniors taking less over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is because I think if we're gonna try to talk seriously about this, we need to know what the actual building administrators think their schedule would look like. If we were offering 8 periods to students, and a lot of students are actually gonna take 8 periods. Well, what are we really talking? Right?
As far as staffing required or
Mhm.
money.
Staffing, sectioning, right?
And this, for us, goes back to that last thing that was struck, right? That committee that looks at best
Yep.
practices around scheduling.
Yep.
I mean, that's why we want to set that thing up, is to look at the. We'll just narrow the blocks, right? But look at what kind of class organizations work best for kids and teachers. What kind of school weeks or calendars or whatever works best for kids and teachers. Does starting the high school an hour and a half later calculator made sense. I mean, just all of those things. We would like to set up our schools to represent best practices for kids and teachers.
Maybe a suggestion I would have if we are gonna go further down that road, I mean, the heading was problematic because it specified. And I guess we didn't want to give the impression that the district was really considering a 4-day instructional week. Like this, setting up that committee tends to express a mutual desire to explore a 4-day instructional week, which we're not there. Now, if you're talking about a more general committee to look at globally scheduling issues and things like that,
That was the intent.
I think that's different than labeling it as a non-instructional.
Because we cut all of our original language around the non-instructional Fridays and replaced it with that thing. We kept the same heading. We probably should have changed that.
I mean, it's helpful to hear more detail about what you're looking for out of that committee. So.
And I'm assuming you're thinking K-12, not just,
Certainly middle school
Right.
is involved in there. But yes, K-12, just best practices all around. Because we would assume, like you said, I mean, changing one schedule. Levels for sure.
to kind of do what we did in 2000.
Yeah.
I was there. We almost went trimester. It was close.
Is that still that 7-period day, the trend?
5, it's a 5-period, that way students get 15 courses over the course of the year. Currently, they get 14, right, on the 7-period day. On the block, they get 16, so trimester is kind of the happy medium. It's just transcripting and making a master schedule with trimesters is problematic. I take math, then I don't take math, now I'm back to taking math. I take band, I don't take band, now I'm back to taking band.
Year-long courses it throws for
Yep.
a total.
Yep,
Oregon City's doing.
Unless you're.
and Centennial, yep. Yeah, they just moved to it a year ago or so, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a recent move to that,
Yep.
which was one of the models that team kind of considered, all these different kinds of schedules.
But yeah, so the trimesters has a much lower financial impact with still a lot of the upsides of a block schedule. Because you get the 70 period, like you get the longer period of time for students, you get the longer prep periods, right, for all the teachers. Less transitions, you're within that trimester, your caseload that you're teaching is lower. Because you're only teaching 4 out of 5 instead of 6 out of 7 or 7 out of 8 with advisory. So
You end up with 3 grading days during the year and no progress reports.
it's middle school, right? It's what we currently do. Like middle school does this right now. But the middle school schedule in terms of credits, right? They don't have graduation that they're dealing with.
Right.
But yeah, kids will get an elective and then they don't get the elective, right? So,
What's more?
yeah, exactly.
Moving on to 5, middle of page 8. We struck the 504 portion of that and kept number 5 just at special education teachers, case managers. And that fits be a place where, we talked about 504, but we kept that have member directed case management. And kept the IEP and mandated documents. I don't know if we struck Donna just because that's just implied, if it's case management, that would be automatically member directed, but
See?
on A, B,
On
A,
A
and
and
B,
B.
It's listed both.
yeah,
We,
my guess is that well, what I was hearing was sometimes IEP case managers might be pulled away for different things and directed by administrator to do something, so I'm not sure why we would need to have member directed.
we have long-standing agreement, like, the member directed and C for that matter, right? Those are established, those are not any changes or things that we are seeking in the case. Remember,
Right.
case management is member directed.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything listed in C now.
I think in A and B, it's redundant if you add C.
I think we all.
I mean,
Like,
I will admit again, I mean,
Like, that's what.
C's there for educating members, right? I mean, those things are all established by other languages.
So then we struck this because we don't think we need member directed in A and B, especially since we have C there. That applies to members. To your point. You shouldn't be doing anything but your case management that can be controlled by anybody else. Yes.
Is in 5A, is the parentheses explaining case management meant to be limiting in some way? And again, why is that only for elementary? Why is that not also included down in B for high school?
Is that the language that Union added? Did you guys add that IEP or did we?
I believe this is your language.
And I would say, I mean, I don't know a lot of elementary. That's during that time, which is neither of these.
It is in your proposal.
Yeah.
Or calls to parents or
Yeah.
checking in on a student in another class, right? It really just needs to be member directed.
But I can see why it's limiting.
I don't know that we need it. It's in your proposal. We figured it out.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Can you, for me, sorry, why you struck 504?
Because it's in 6, we're limiting just 5 to specifically talk about IEP case managers, and then 6, we felt like it's where we could put some language that we addresses case managers, which really are. Talked about this a little bit earlier, had it kind of in the beginning, this moved it to.
I think the idea was that there's an acknowledgement that 504 case managers are doing a heavier lift now than ever before, but it's still not apples to apples what an IEP case manager is doing through. So how do we find that middle ground?
Not with our staff, which is putting it.
Discussing 6 times.
Uh,
So, that's what I would say to their principal, hey, I need 2 hours to do this stuff. I understand there would be established norms along something. The principal would say, okay, Thursday at 10 is your time to do it.
Or better yet, the principal would say, how are the 504s coming? Are you having enough time during your day? You're not? Okay, let's figure out and find some ways to give you some uninterrupted time to get it done. I mean, to me, that's why I think the language principals will work with 504 case managers. As a principal myself, I feel like that's part of my responsibility to ensure that my counselor has protected time to do that.
There would be some time where people aren't gonna be sent to the counselor, or the counselor's not gonna get pulled away from something. This is the time for them to do
Exactly.
it.
Yeah, I mean, I read that to be a mandate that we ensure that they have non-student contact time to do that.
Yeah, if that means I have to hide my counselor somewhere else in the building and make their office all dark and they're out sick for the day, that's what I gotta do, right? I mean, we know, let's put them out. Like, kids are like, they find their counselor anywhere. Yeah.
moving down.
Can I-
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Just a format. Procedure question. There is some language like at the end of 6 where we proposed language and it was struck.
Mm,
But not all of our proposed changes made it back into your proposal to get struck. And like, we were looking for, wait. I think I'm looking at the old.
Yeah, we've changed the header, didn't we? Let's look and see.
1 year, you're better.
That's old.
Yeah, okay, here's the package. Give us just a moment.
Just a second.
You got it.
Pardon my interruption. I am incorrect. Thank you.
It's my understanding that counselors don't get denied. And
And
and I don't think it's a lot of people putting in.
Well, and so one of the reasons for the strike was some flexibility in how we support that need. So for example, right now, we have a counselor, we have added a little additional piece of time, and that is one of the go-to people to support 504. So that might happen before HCW happens. So that maintains some flexibility in how we kind of navigate where those hotspots are.
And again, the intent for us, right, because our understanding is people aren't being denied, so
Right.
the dollar figure is not what's important.
Right.
What's important for us is there are buildings that have significantly more
Yep.
floors. We don't want them facing financial consequences.
Yeah, sure.
District level funds.
It is.
All right, moving down to C3. We struck the first long as the district maintains the block schedule language. Reasons that we discussed before. And we talked already about the reasonable schedule language for in regards to counselors having, no student. And in lieu of, which on the next page, hold 20% of their contract. I think our language gets flexibility.
So you think your new language in four would come with counselors being full to shadow the students and having to cancel their groups for the day?
Doesn't prevent them.
It's not very
Right. When I look at your language in four, I look at the specific things that we addressed at the end on the previous page, I don't necessarily see a line.
Well, I think you can come back with something that you think. I think our hangup was first of all, the 20%, it's really hard to calculate that. I don't think we disagree that there's should be pulled away to,
The 20%, counselors already do an annual calculation
right,
as required. And all the rest of the pieces in here is from the handbook.
They do that calculation, like,
It's not,
what is, that seems like an enormous amount of work to keep track of, like, on a day-to-day basis, like,
One of the things they
It
do.
is.
I just have like these nightmares of Mark in a grievance meeting saying, well, actually, 22% of.
Nightmare. Nightmare scenario, correct.
So I don't, having that number, I mean, I would echo what Angela said, if we didn't quite get at it with our language. But I think having a specific baseline like that 20% is hard, in a calculation. sense.
So, and just for me to get your guys' intent, I read your two things as, okay, you're gonna protect the time to do paper.
Mhm.
It is also your intent to protect the time for them to do counseling work?
I just don't know how yes, but then on having a concrete number, you might have to.
But that the intent is to also protect the counseling.
I mean, I
work.
think our
And
intent
that
is,
other necessary job duties
Yes.
should be encompassing, like when you mentioned missing a group.
Right.
Because they're just hanging out with a kid, like that sounds awful, like no. Like, let's try to avoid that, right?
Okay.
that's the other necessary job.
Yeah, like I want that counselor doing the groups.
well, and then I think we also kind of were having the discussion around counselor providing responsive services, and when does responsive services, when is that actually counseling and when is that behavior management? It's like sometimes there's a fine line or a gray line when a counselor is responding to a student in crisis, for example. And that's the person, that's the go-to person, that the counselor is actually the right person for that kid at that time. Is that responsive or is that counseling work, and where do we,
And I think,
so.
I think that's where the end of the last sentence, right? They're talking about their role when they're responding to students, being counseling consultation. As opposed to their role just being behavior management.
Well, or supervision. So I feel like in previous discussions, we are all on the same page. The point when a counselor is doing supervision,
Right.
that's where the principal needs to step in and problem solve, like, I don't want that counselor doing supervision when and missing their group.
Yep.
Right?
Or not being able to go into the classrooms they were supposed to go into.
Exactly, exactly.
They've got curriculum, they have to. Thank you.
Yes, I think we're closer than that than in agreements. For C. Number of, this is under class size, student load, caseload committee. We're agreeing to that language. Proposed where it includes, ELL students. We're still not, in agreement with the you had struck no changes to financial, due to financial or business space and time. We want to hopefully come to some type of agreement. I think that's the intent. I think sometimes there is no change on, that is just the answer. So we didn't feel comfortable keeping that. There's a lot of other options here that I think that we could actually get to and do get to. Sorry. Oh. We're in. And then with the caps and thresholds, we struck that, and much of that is described in our financial menu here. The cost of that would be very prohibitive. In addition to, I think Brian, at one point where if the goal is to have class sizes be smaller, this model does not. You want to expand on that?
You guys
Yep.
heard it spiel and hear it repeated again.
No.
But the cost is laid out, and that was part of why we wanted to do that. The costing, one of the things that I heard last time was, I think I said at the end, it's like, this is a really big. Get heavily prioritized. So just trying to figure out in dollars, what money is going to impact most members and be sustainable and impact children at a more direct. And
My only clarification, and I won't go through my whole spiel again, is our costing of 408,370 was assuming overage pay in every instance. So it was not assuming, it felt like it would have been misleading to cost it as staffing to meet these levels, because that's not literally what your proposal called for. But that just reinforces what we've been saying, that we don't know that this proposal actually reduces class size, because if we had costed it to meet these staffing levels, the number would have been exponentially higher. So we're always going to go for the 408,000 instead of the some odd million it would cost to staff at those levels. That just would be a reality.
and we put the staffing cost right there in that first level, 34 licensed teachers,
Oh, it's 3.8. Sorry, we did put it.
but it's just not calculated in.
Yeah.
column. And then the sped overage cap would be 40 licensed staff. 4.6.
Yeah.
And that doesn't include the count, because we didn't get the counseling calculation in there. So it's actually more than.
So that cost is minus additional.
And it also the offices and the space you would use too. So the cost.
The only other piece on the special ed counseling is, you're gonna pay the overages. I don't know that you could literally find enough people to hire to meet those numbers. It would presume that you could find PTs and counselors and, speech paths especially.
I mean, I would say at least from the speech paths perspective, I think if we had some like defined caseload limits that looked good comparatively to what other districts are seeing on their numbers, I think you would see a lot of speech paths jump ship to access that. That is a chronic problem, largely statewide for speech pathologists, so. I think if like a district actually put that out there and put it up, like, I think they'd get a lot of bites. I'm pretty sure that's what Salem did when they jacked their FTE up for speech pathologists significantly to accomplish that, is they had a lot of people bite.
We have added back the language, except in the case of emergency for substituting. And somebody on that team, was that you, Ryan? That's really good.
Well, I was just thinking about, like, in cases of emergency where we can't get coverage, we have classified jumping in and getting compensated. It just didn't seem like, why wouldn't we also have, reach out to our other licensed staff? Yes, they may not be a licensed teacher, but neither are classified. And so I guess one thing I would be interested is, how often is that happening? And is it maybe it's not that she'll never substitute, but maybe there's something in there that will, I don't know. I guess I'm just curious what you're hearing.
I mean, from my perspective, at least on that, as a speech pathologist, and I know this would apply to some physical therapists as well, I am barely able to meet the mandated minutes for my students. And I know some speech pathologists who are having trouble even doing that right now with their caseloads. So if we're being pulled out to substitute for teachers, we have legally mandated minutes for students that are not getting it.
Got it. So the concern, I get it. That's different.
Is that
than what
happening?
we're hearing.
Well, I think
Like-
this, I'm gonna just jump.
I don't think it's
that's
happening now,
mostly-
but I have definitely heard of it happening in other school districts.
Correct.
Well, and it did happen in, like, was it last year? Or the year before? Anyway, when, with the subs.
The year before.
22.
And so not currently happening now or in any
That's
intent
what I would have thought too.
for it to happen now. The phrase except in a case of emergency, to me, that would have to be like true safety, like big safety. Hey, I need you to come watch this while I, right, do this big thing. So I don't know how in a contract.
But I agree, it's literally in the case of an emergency. Sometimes we use that phrase a little bit loosely, like something might not be a true flat out emergency. I mean, I feel like that's kind of what we're talking about here. Like, there's gonna be a group of kids completely left unsupervised if we don't have somebody in that room. Not just the convenience.
And you can play with the language around, after all other options are exhausted or something along.
I mean, I would just toss out there, I mean, we don't have an except in the case of emergency after every clause, right? And so high school gets a daily prep period. I never believed the principal, if there's a fire in the building
Mhm.
and now they're not getting the prep period. I mean, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And so the same thing here, right? Like, to my understanding, and I could be wrong, they are not licensed to teach. Right? And so
Maybe rare.
they cannot substitute.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can
So-
supervise.
I think that almost the wording usage there is almost not necessarily substitute as much as it is supervised.
Which is what classified do.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, we're gonna take one of the security personnel and they're gonna hang out in here with you.
Here is a free
For a half.
accent from a licensed person. that-
They're not giving any instruction.
Supervised.
So maybe
Not running lessons.
shall not substitute,
Thursday.
except in maybe it's supervised. I don't know, because that's what I was thinking too as I read this. We're never gonna ask them to substitute.
And again, I
We
mean,
might ask them to supervise.
and anything like this, right, if they're reaching out to me as a grievance person, counselors who get sent kids during their prep periods and lunch all the time, my first advice to them is, you go to your principal and you say, I need to have this chunk of time and this chunk of time set aside where there are alternate plans where kids don't get sent to me, they get sent somewhere else. And if there are is in place for these people where they're not subbing. And oh my God, that fell apart at the last moment,
Mhm.
right? Look, to the best of my knowledge, we have never had an issue where we have grieved something like this or made an issue out of it. Because they'll call up and I'm like, what happened? And they're like, well, 4 subs didn't show up. And there were kids running around in the hallways. And I'm like, probably needed some supervision, right? I mean, and so I don't think that language is important.
Good to know. Equity committee, we are proposing to move that to maybe 31. We just didn't think this was the right maybe area for it, in hours and workload. But we agreed to most of the language and added a couple of things. If a member at a site established an equity committee with administrator approval and oversight, we added. The district will compensate participating members at their curriculum rate up to an amount previously approved by the district. So we added the oversight only because we believe that the building principal should be involved in some way in an equity committee. Specifically, if there's going to need to be some movement happening within, if this teacher-led group wants to do something within the building, the principal needs to be involved. Which would be hopefully what an equity committee would want to do.
I like that side of it. But I just had like a visceral reaction.
Thank you.
The sensitivity of what is sometimes discussed in an equity meeting, and I worry, I'm not agreeing with you, because again, I like the idea of yes, administrative involvement in a positive way. I worry that the word oversight would be interpreted as control.
Maybe
Potentially.
intention,
Yeah, well,
you
but,
could-
yeah, maybe it's just the word.
participation.
Yeah.
I totally understand, and I wonder. You understand where I'm, as a principal.
Yeah,
Like, I want you to be able to, not you, the group to be able to. Lead a PD in a staff meeting and be able to. Make some movement within the building, but the principal needs to have some involvement in that, to make that happen.
I think the concern would be that administrator oversight would be stifling, chilling the actions.
And not make it a safe spread. Maybe it's just that word oversight that made me feel like that equity committee may not feel like a safe space.
Right, maybe involvement is the right word.
Or participation.
Participation.
Review.
Is involvement. not
Review.
separate.
Sure, yeah, yeah. You know, I mean,
That's like some of it.
I appreciate your explanation. I was trying to go back.
Explanation, I like involvement.
Great, we'll look for involvement. It's fine.
If this is moved to 31, then it has to be posted, like.
It could be moved anywhere.
It could be moved anywhere. It just didn't feel like a workday thing.
Yeah,
But you're hearing what he says, right? It
Yeah.
complicates it.
And it's different from the other committees, right, in miscellaneous services.
Our intent of the committee was for it not to be something that's posted by a principal.
Yeah.
The members on the equity team are approved by the principal and selected. It's just like they can form it amongst themselves and hit up the principal and say, hey,
Yeah.
does this work for you?
I don't know that we really care where it goes. If it stays here, it stays here. It felt like a different topic,
Weird,
but,
but it is weird. It's a one-off.
yeah. I'm trying to think of what else. It's not really a member
you
right.
could go to an appendix.
It could.
No, Laura.
Then an MOU, but an MOU.
No.
That would be.
And I think we are agreeing, and we've already discussed number 2, and that is the last page.
Last page, you just fill in whatever you want.
Let me get started.
Last page. Break.
Yeah, quick
Quick
break.
break, 10 minutes, and then we'll move into 15?
Yeah.
Well, 15 minutes with Gresham. We'll check in at 10 and see if you scored.
Hang on, we're still.
Still recording. I think somebody's coming to push buttons. We were told that they couldn't hear us very well,
I don't think
so.
the video's on.
It is, it was before, it just didn't show up.
No, it's right here. It's not.
Okay,
It's just screw around it. So right next to where you unmuted the mic. You just click video. There you go.
Just keep us posted if they can't hear. Wow. What did 25?
25. But you already saw kind of a significant piece of our proposal there that then is represented in section A. We've gone up to 4% in year 3 again. Kind of banking on or hoping that our next biennium funding will be better. For us, it's easier to put higher dollar figures at the back end. First of all, less compounding effect the way if we put it in year 1, and then number 2, budget's in place for this year. Obviously, we're into the 2024-25, so significant changes we make in that. An obvious budget impact. And again, I think I brought this up when we were looking at the costing sheet. It did feel like we were in kind of a difficult position because, you know, we talked about when they held at their last position on salary, you know, how do we move at this point, or do we just do the same? I think we want to keep this process moving forward. And so, you know, I still reflect on the fact that in most bargains, a 4.34 would have been significantly higher proposal than we even settled at. And I realized times are different now than they were 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I think we're reflecting that in our proposal. But we are no longer in that 8%, 8.5% inflation phase. Our inflation has dropped below 3% now. So I think that piece of it has swung back. So we're looking for something sustainable. We're looking to not be, you know, in a 3 or 5 year look ahead, not be moved into a reduction in force phase. So that's section A. Section B, I think we adopted kind of the spirit of your language.
It's our language in person.
Yes.
First sentence.
So really, it's that qualifier in the second sentence. This section shall apply to members hired for the 25-26 school year and thereafter. I asked the question last time, was this supposed to be backward looking, the message, or what I understood was the answer was no. The impact of this will grow tremendously if the proposal were to go back and take current people and adjust their placement. Right? So that's what would not happen under our proposal. This would be forward looking only. So that is a change from your proposal, but again, I thought when I asked the question about whether retroactivity was envisioned or a look back, I didn't feel like that it was.
Can I ask a quick question before I move much on?
Yes.
I'm looking at the costing sheet again. And just for both yours and ours, like I'll look at our 9%. You're saying our 9% quota in 24-25 cost $9 million. Which would mean that associated payroll is $100 million. Right? And that's 9% of $100 million is $9 million. So where is that coming from?
I'm going to defer to Dennis for costing.
And then again,
So we proposed a 9% quota. You're saying that'll cost 9.3 million. That would mean that it was about $100 million, a little less than $100 million for it to be $9 million. That's not true. Right, and so I'm trying to figure out where those numbers are coming from. Your numbers as well, the 5.6 is a little close, like,
the 9.6 is fully loaded payroll cost.
which is still not 100 million.
Disagree with that. In general, but I can't tell you exactly right up.
Okay. That's all, I was just trying to clarify that.
So that would be. C, I think you had a proposal there for every 2 years of non-teaching experience, 1 year of salary advancement shall be given. Angela, remember what position was?
So right now, and I was not around for this bargain, so folks are gonna have to remind me of this. The additional steps for salary placement based on a member's relevant industry or non-teaching employment experience. We've been using that, because we have the CTE folks who come in from the industry who may not have their teaching license, so this is allowed more. This now is asking for those. I would not like this necessarily to apply. Maybe it's applying, we've had some teachers who are asking for non-classroom teachers to have some of that experience count. Or our school psychs, or some departments in the counseling. Where that might count, and that would be an expense. Just not able to.
It says name, right, you don't have to give anyone any,
Yeah,
and so I know, like, as far as history goes, almost everyone has been CTE. You said no to everyone else. You have the right to do that.
so then what,
What do you use as structure? Placings?
Yeah, 3-to-1.
Is that just like an unwritten rule, or
That's the practice. That's what HR tells people. So we got people coming in with 7 years and they're being told, well, we'll give you 2 years experience. And they're already starting on step 2 with 0 years experience, right? So we got people who are like seriously pissed off because when they interviewed, they were told, oh yeah, you've got industry experience. We'll credit that. And when the calculation comes out, they're getting little to no credit as a result of it. So our intent is to move to a 2-to-1 as opposed to a 3-to-1 when the district chooses to use it.
Can I ask about how many, because I know we have the CT program. How many people does that generally?
It's gonna be every single CTE.
How many is that? Is it 10? Is it 20? Is it 50? I don't
The
know.
high school,
Educators that are coming in.
if you
into the
take-
industry.
let's say you take 6 people per high school,
Okay.
right? So I mean, we're talking less than 15.
Okay.
Um, and these are usually like difficult to fill,
Mhm.
right? They don't want someone going into a CTE job who doesn't have any.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, look, I'm a brand new teacher. I got my license,
Right.
right? Hey, please hire me. And then you got somebody who did the job for, 10 years or 8 years or whatever. And they're being told, yeah, we're gonna credit you. And they're coming in with a license, right? We're not talking about people coming in without a license. They've got a teaching license. They went back to school. They got their MAT, right? And now they're taking a major pay cut
Okay. I
because
just
they're
wasn't sure.
getting put on like step 2 or step 3 instead of up on step 5 or 6.
Okay.
So,
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
yep.
We agree that this is really what we're talking about here is CTE folks though, right?
It's whatever the district, whoever they choose.
Yeah.
But yes, it's been applied to CTE positions. That's where we have seen it.
And again, we acknowledge the district name.
The only example I can think of is not CTE is foreign language. Right? So again, you've got, like, there've been some people who were hired to teach Spanish and they wanted people with some experience and they had collegiate level experience, but not public education level experience. And
They were translators, they did other language related.
yeah, so they were professors, right, at college level, and they didn't get a 1-to-1, they got a 3-to-1 calculation for that. And they ended up coming in at the same pay level as a brand new, fresh out of college, 0 years experience. So, and they're not with us anymore because they left. They went somewhere that paid better.
I'm sorry. see, more recently, we had a situation, I think it was from a counselor or school site, someone where they wanted to count their internship,
Mhm.
which we did not
Mhm.
do.
Which is 1 year.
1 year.
And they reached
And-
out to me and I said, you don't
Yeah.
have the right to
And
make
it's,
it.
Yeah.
so it's those kinds of
This,
things.
this wouldn't, I mean, even with our calculation, that would, yeah, 1 year would take.
Yeah. I think that maybe I'd like to take a swing back on this language to think about it in line with some of this conversation, because I know districts are largely moving to be able to more competitively place CTE people, especially that college. That foreign language one's an interesting one. I hadn't heard that one before. That's an interesting one. So,
Yeah, I noticed it doesn't have the cost on spreadsheet either.
yeah, we were struggling to know what that cost would be, but yeah, I mean, part of my brain is like, I don't know that I want to lock into a 2-to-1. I mean, what if we wanted to give 1-to-1? You can.
I mean, because
The language does say add event. So
Right.
it
Oh,
only
thanks.
leaves it open.
You're right.
You can pick
Right.
one.
Yeah.
We're just trying to move away from the 3-to-1. So it's a brutal calculation when people contact us after the first or second pay cycle at the beginning of the year, when they've recently taken a job, but they're like, but in the interview, they told me,
But they shouldn't be telling that.
which they shouldn't be,
Interview with-
right? And that's the first thing I tell them is whoever you interviewed with should not be talking to you about money, because they're not human resources. But, yeah, it's a big surprise.
Just a question, not necessarily one way either. What, is there currently a protocol for our outside staff? Like EA and they go through our framework? Do they get any credit for using service?
When they're being hired into a licensed
We
position.
do.
Is it a 3-to-1?
I don't know.
That's how I've seen it apply.
Or
If someone is gonna be
Relevant.
in 5 years in one of our buildings, we hire them as a licensed staff because.
oh, and the license.
see, then-
No.
It's, does that count? Be the 3-to-1?
Yeah.
Again, I mean, my guidance for members is the district can place you at any step. For any time, for any reason. Always higher, never lower. They can say, hey, you have been a auto mechanic and now you're a math teacher, so we're gonna give you 9 steps of credit. They can. Right, and there's no grieving.
May have run into some pay equity act problems.
Not contractually.
Yeah.
If you're doing it because it's your son, someone's gonna let you know that was not.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Thank goodness.
I mean, it really is to me, a CTE thing.
Yeah.
Where I see it coming up
Yeah.
the most. So I'd like to talk about this one a little bit. We have a variety of other pieces in here where you guys made proposals that were economic in nature. We costed the ones that we could cost. Some of them, it was not possible to put a cost behind. So like, may grant credits for salary advancement for members who participate in workshops. I think that was one that could not be costed. The L, use achievement units through the Professional Growth Academy to move across the salary schedule. Hard to know what the cost would be. We're presuming there would be a cost. People are moving across the salary schedule quicker.
But we've done it. We've had agreements to do this.
Were those in MOUs in the
Yeah.
past?
Yes.
And they're no longer active.
They're just
MOUs?
individual years, right, signed each year.
We had
That have
one
been
last year.
signed multiple times.
My understanding is that the district intends to continue the PGE program this year,
Next
Yeah,
year.
or is it on pause?
It's on pause this year, I'll be back next year.
is it? Okay.
PGA.
Yes, sir.
PG, I'm a PGE.
My letter wrong.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with those MOUs, so.
Yeah, so when it comes to L, we're not asking for anything new. It's just what we've been doing.
has it been an off and on thing? Like some
Oh.
years it was that, and some years it weren't?
Well, once it was established, it's
Use that For
existed.
salary advance, you've been able to use that for
Yeah.
salary advancement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, since what, 16 or 17? BGA was created in 16. I think, so I mean, like, this stuff's been going on for quite some time.
It's established, it's
Okay,
long run.
we're just trying to get it out of MOU and put it into,
Got it.
like, yeah, we're doing this, right? We've been doing it, so
Okay, that's the
if
one,
that offers clarity.
that's one for us to talk about in caucus.
I'm not sure.
The doctorate members and the national board cert, where we did put a cost behind those, again, in and of themselves, especially the doctorate one, not a large cost. It's an allocation of resources issue, you know, where are we gonna put money throughout this article? The longevity stipend obviously was the more impactful piece. You see our costs there, very significant. So again, that's a fairly significant cost that would go to one area of our salary schedule, folks at the top. Who admittedly don't get step increase from year to year the way that others do, acknowledge that. But it will be an allocation question, you know, a priority question for us. Dennis, did I miss anything, or Angela, anything you want to add on 25?
Can I go back to Mark's question?
Yep.
Could you state that again for me?
9%? Question from a while ago?
Yeah.
Okay, so yours, the sheet is saying that the financial impact for 9% COLA in 24-25, 9,382,000.
Additional cost.
So the 9,382,000 is 9% of something. And that would be about $100 million to get to the $9 million being 9%. And I don't believe we're favorable, including rollover. Well, costs is $100 million. So what payroll
Well,
number?
that's taking current table,
Okay.
multiplying by the number of people in the city,
Yeah.
multiply that by 9.
Which again means current people in current cells is $100 million. Being $9 million.
Right, so that actually is probably about the 2/3 of our budget is licensed staff.
It is,
Cool, thank you. And the other thing, the 4% COLA that you have is 5,600,000, not based on the same number. Right, because the 9,
we have is in the first year. You have the first couple of years combined.
No, we have it in the first year as well.
so the 9 million in the 24-25 on our cost is 5.6 million in the 4%. Those two numbers are not based on the same original number. They're not the same percentages of.
All right, let us check that out.
Yeah.
We'll have time during the caucus, obviously.
So in the spring, one of the things we tried to do was define some of the numbers.
Mhm.
And on our slide deck, we said 1% with roll-ups and step was just shy of 753. So like that times 9 is definitely not 9 million and change. 753. So, I mean, we had the 1%, right, just salary, and then we had the 1% roll up, and then we had the 1% with roll up and step, right, which is supposed to be our all-in number, right? So we're just trying to compare apples to apples.
So are we,
That's good. That's what we have been working.
Yeah, we definitely want to do the same, and I don't want this to be inaccurate, so we'll check during our caucus just to make sure. Thank you. Yeah. Again, if you see other things on this, bring them to our attention, please.
all right, Article 29.
29.
Insurance.
Yeah, I mean, our differences are negligible in total cost, but we didn't, you know, having kind of the continual increases of the average plan increases while not impactful in this first year, I think does two things for us that we worry about. Number one, if the structure of OEB were to change such that there was no longer a rate collar, right now there's that 3.6% rate collar. If the legislature or whomever controls OEB said that's not handling medical costs, we're adjusting that to 9% or something like that. I mean, the district would be on the hook for all of it. I think for us, what your proposal would do would be make the district responsible for all future premium increases, which is too much of a fight for us to take. I mean, year one, again, I think are very little difference in our proposals cost-wise. So, but assuming responsibility for all future increases, not knowing that OEB will always have that rate collar is too much for us. We've largely tried to maintain costs or keep costs out of this proposal, except with the cap increases. So we did not adopt that change in the second paragraph.
And one that was struck, I think that we unstruck was the district contributed unspent funds remaining in members 125, et cetera. That is by law, that money goes back to the district. I don't know if you struck it or not, but it's unstruck. I think
It's the default by law, again, bargaining.
D3, Angela, remind me on the LTD, we wanted to, you had a different proposal there, but we needed to tie it.
Yeah, I talked with Aaron and the $8,000 per month is what OEB right now allows. So we just changed that language. But this is whatever OEB allows. So if we decide to change and not go with OEB anymore, work with OEB to have a different cap, then that kind of.
There was a piece on the top of page 2 that got bargained in last time, but didn't get written in.
Number 5.
Number 5, the EAP program. It's shown as new language, but it's not really new language.
You didn't highlight it.
So, yeah,
It was blue.
it was in blue.
And Brian didn't like the blue.
I said, why is it in blue? Yeah. Section M, we picked up your language. And then strike out of the exploratory insurance committee. Yeah, I would remember when that got added, it was kind of an internal ruling question. All right, I'm gonna turn 33 over.
Well, we've done 33. but
I'm
we're
sorry,
gonna
31.
31. All right, this was quite a mathematical challenge to try to figure out all this. We, on page 2, with high school dance chaperones, agreed that we should change it to per hour, but changed it from $50 an hour to $35 per hour per event. I mean, per $35. And I learned a lot about how many are had and how many people have to go to them. That's it. Number 13, we agreed with that language. 15. I think
On
that's,
page 1,
sorry.
change.
Yeah,
Is there a change?
you struck our language.
Oh, sorry, yeah, just a little teeny tiny thing. Sorry, it's a little number. Yeah, down, we, struck the BA 5 and left it at 2.
We have an interest in making our extra duty contracts competitive
For sure.
other local districts. And our concern, of course, and the reason we want to continue to advance the pay for those folks is to make this position competitive. We're curious what the district wants to do about that.
When you, did you guys do a comparative review. Do you have that data anywhere? I'd be
It's on a
interested.
big old spreadsheet.
Yeah, can you distill it down for somebody who's limited like myself, or do you just have it in a big giant spreadsheet? That will take me a long time to look at.
The number of positions, right, different districts offer different positions, so we found commonalities
Uh-huh.
with positions and compared them, right? So take head coaching positions across a lot of the sports, some of the major high school club
Uh-huh.
type activities, right? That are offered in all major high schools. And when we compared the way that different districts pay, because they all kind of structure their extra duties differently. Some of them, you know, every position has like a dollar amount
Uh-huh.
listed, some of them have a table like hours, and it's tied to some kind of formula that calculates it. But bottom line, final dollar amount, our coaches are underpaid.
That's interesting. I wonder if it's how that table is structured, because I'm most familiar, and I don't know about you, Bruce. You know, BA step one has kind of been the benchmark point for most extra duty schedules to be built off.
Yeah.
So that's why I just get confused if it.
There were a lot of positions that list individual dollar as opposed to. And those dollar amounts are tied. So what they moved away from is the BA piece, Brian, and they moved to like flat, so like $3,500, right? And then there's language at the beginning of their extra duty article or appendix or whatever it is that says, whatever we agree to in contract negotiations, we're gonna increase all these numbers by that same percentage, right? So if they settle for a 4% COLA,
Then your flat dollar
they
goes
just
up.
take all those numbers and they just multiply them by 1.0, right? Which is interesting because that's definitely a little bit more complicated, but from a membership point of view, they can look at it really clearly and see, oh, if I do this job, I'm gonna make this money.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to anybody who tries to think about accepting or applying for a posted extra duty position. They kind of have to go in and kind of do a calculation for it, right? It's not always crystal clear for them what the pay is going to be.
Did you find that it was across the board then, or did there appear to be some positions that were jumped out at you, or was it kind of universal?
It's most of the big head coaching positions.
I love a good spreadsheet, so I would love to take a crack at it.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't mind seeing that either.
Okay.
Oh, no, I was.
You said boil it down.
Boil it
Yeah.
down. Oh, now it's the big one here. Okay, so there was a lot of really good thinking, I think. Very good thinking. I love when we can condense things into fewer words, but it just kind of covers everything. So just take a look at my language.
Where are we at?
On the top of page 4, any member working at a DLI school where being bilingual is a requirement of the position shall be paid at 5% of BA step 2. We chose 5% of BA step 2 because that mirrors what currently is special education teachers. That's for that. Multilingual stipend. Any member who can certify that they are bilingual as described below, which I think is a lot of our language together, and does not qualify for the DLI stipend, which would be the requirement of the position piece, shall be paid $2,000 stipend. We came up with that number as it was pretty close to 2% of step. And there's a percentage of,
Yeah, we had that calculation.
we were trying to look at what's the,
That's about what 3% of step 5 is. And the $2,000 is without.
so that's where that number came from. And then the language below, it's mostly the language that I can't remember if you proposed or we both proposed mishmash. But crossing out the will be compensated part because we've added that $2,000 above. That shouldn't be new language down there.
What's the cost of 5% BA step?
Percent of BA step 2 is $3,240 plus payroll.
Right. Cause your language would be, they need to be one or the other. Either. So the difference is 1,200.
The differences between what you get as a DLI stipend or what you get as the multilingual stipend, yes. Yeah, I think the DLI stipend for us reflects both the language ability and the workload piece of it. So it makes sense for that one to be higher. The multilingual one is language. I mean, I suppose you could say, well, it's some work where you see members will be expected to assist with language needs to assist students or families they work with. So there's an expectation that goes along with it, but it's different.
What are some examples where someone would not qualify for the DLI stipend, but may qualify for the multilingual?
An EML teacher at Hollydale who may use Spanish to support conversations with parents or students. They're bilingual. So it's bilingual staff across the district that might benefit or would benefit to highlight bilingualism or multilingualism.
Okay, so we're
Could also
talking about
be-
non-DLI buildings.
No, it could be both. Depends.
That's why I
So,
clarified. Yeah,
because if you, like the EML teachers at Highland and North who do use their language to support families,
Mhm.
but they're not, their job is specifically to not teach in Spanish, right? They're supporting English.
sure.
So they
They would get
include
the,
them
they would.
as well as other staff members, including classroom teachers in other buildings who may need to use their language skills to communicate with families. Those people could apply for that.
Correct. Would the district make a list of positions that where being bilingual is a requirement of the position?
It's posted on this.
But it does, I mean, that's my thing.
Talking about all the current people, not new positions.
Like, we would have no recourse if you changed it from bilingual to non-bilingual. I mean, you could.
Required, you mean?
Yeah, so I mean, you could put a DLI teacher and not to be bilingual.
Be down.
I understand. But you could.
Then it wouldn't be a DLI.
I think we can
Well,
agree
it
that
would. It would not get the stipend, and you would still hire someone. You would just not say it wasn't required. I'm not saying you would do any of those things.
Right.
But we would have no recourse.
It's sticky.
What I'm saying, yeah.
That language is sticky.
So this is our attempt
Mhm.
at trying to make this a little more concise and clear. You can make it better. And then, oh, sorry.
Language elsewhere around how jobs have been. So those positions have to be posted.
They do.
There's something else somewhere.
Classified. Classified.
Only classified. Okay.
Not our contract.
In D, we're trying to make the clarification there. There's a special education teacher who received the stipend. They can get 2 stipends if they qualify for one of the stipends above, which would be the multilingual, the DLI.
they just can't get 3.
Can't get 3 stipends. So if you're a DLI teacher, sped, that's where we can go at it.
So that's just a rewrite of our. So you crossed out ours, but then you have yours.
And it also
This
allows.
is just intended to be a rewrite.
And it clarifies that it's 2 out of 3 and not
Mhm.
3 out.
If you have a resource teacher or an LA teacher in another building, non-DLS building, we fall under the multiple.
Okay, yeah, okay.
I don't,
If you can find it bilingual sped teachers.
We have one.
We would need one more.
Why didn't you tell them how they're having it?
It's like the unit.
Well,
we have a question.
Any member working at a DLI school, in a different field.
That's important.
Say that again.
What is it?
If any member working at a DLI school, we're being by the local requirement. So when we have staff who support both schools. Sure.
It's still a requirement. of their job.
They wouldn't double.
Good job. Was, right, no, that's not what I think doesn't apply, even though, I mean, if.
Even if they're not full-time.
Yeah,
So,
right,
yeah.
if my work site is what?
Right.
Right,
Oh, yes, so maybe at or with or supporting, and maybe, yeah. The intent is that if it's required of your job because you're working at a different school, students, then you should be.
thank you.
However, we can write that to be more clear.
We're,
Nothing that I can clearly see on page 5. I'm thinking my little teeny numbers. Are you crying? Why? You don't want, you want another committee?
With what we proposed.
You already saw, you want another committee?
I would just like our community contracts to be responsive.
Yeah, and you know what?
To the needs.
I don't think that when we were talking about it as a group, I don't think we should disagree with that.
We
It's
agree,
the-
I agree.
Yeah, the complexities of that chart and who's on it, who's not, how come, you know, folks are not getting the same as another. I think that should be had, but we thought maybe that could come through the normal process. Looking at this. Maybe not an MOU, please. I mean, or yes,
I put it in an MOU
put it
because
in an MOU.
it's not durable. I mean, you won't always want an extra duty committee, but maybe you do it.
The other layer is, like, we have an OST committee that has been meeting. We have athletic directors that meet. Those two things are separate and different.
Mhm.
We have activities directors that meet. So I think it gets really complicated to say extra duty in such a broad sense, when it's all of those different groups, and those groups already have a way that they function. Another.
We agreed to the robotic. And the OSD coordinator, I think, was already there, but it was in a different spot.
Quick question about the middle school OSD coordinator. They
Yeah.
currently receive a stipend based on a seat.
Based on what?
The stipend goes the length of the seat. So they receive that per, I guess it would be sun school time. Right? It'd be one in the fall, winter and spring. So that is what our current MOU does.
They did it multiple times.
Yeah. It's not a one stipend over the year.
As long as it's offered. There's something to manage.
I just wanted to be clear about what our intent is for that piece. But it basically matches the stipend that currently exists in the
And just for me, robotics is new, middle school is new on the chart. Somebody's been doing robotics for
15 years.
15 years, they're not gonna get placed on one just because it's a new position. They're getting the credit for equivalent years of experience in order to be placed on the
Years.
years.
If it's the same.
I was gonna say, same person, we're assuming it'd be that person.
Yeah, not every, okay, just checking.
Thank you.
And then the last pieces were which dry, and part of it, a lot of it was cost, but my team's gonna have to remind me of some of that.
Let's see. One. Just thought that employee numbers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Part of it's cleaning it up, part of it is new stuff.
Where are you?
Page 11, on the old timey chart.
Wow. It's fine.
Extended season.
No, but it's like, yeah.
Oh, wait, we're not there yet.
Oh.
We're on the bottom part of, because we
Thank you. Thank you.
had questions about, we're on 10. And some of that was money and others were, for example, coaches, club advisors and others who agree to transport students by taking the approved training. That's already happening, but we necessarily want. Transporting students, I think I heard that in the conversation.
On district approved.
So that's what the thinking was behind that. Anybody else have any questions? Remember any conversations about
Yes.
cost?
It's all
The biggest thing really about. So this old timey chart that we were looking at on the next page, the strikeouts were not because we didn't agree, we just needed more information about why those in particular, why those positions.
So cheer and dance definitely have extended, they go to state, right? And I can tell you, I'm pretty sure these people have been getting paid via this language. It just doesn't explicitly state that those positions, right? The head coach, the assistant coach, you take your team to state, that season extends longer, right? All the rest of the, coaches, let's say you got, Gresham versus Barlow. The Barlow team goes to state, the Gresham team doesn't. The Gresham coaches are done, right? Season's over. Barlow's still coaching, right? That's why it's called extended season. That's how going to state works, right? So.
Our question on the cheer and dance, like every year, don't they go to the state competition? It's not something that they qualify for and go to playoffs, and like that's their end of the season thing. Like if I know going into the season, like that's the end of our season is we go to the state competition. That feels different than our team had a year and we qualified and then went on to do extra stuff than we would have done ordinarily. So that's true. That was part of our question. I'd love more information. If my understanding of that is incorrect, then I'd want to know more.
I would have to dig into the athletic directors and probably their secretaries actually. Would be the people to talk to.
Because I took this chart to be like, again, doing more than you thought you might have to do as you went into the season. Like, here's my season, now I'm doing more, so.
And not something that you planned for just because you fundraised for it and it was fun, but you earned the right to. move
Qualifying for
on,
nationals, yeah.
Qualifying something.
And that's what you look at the final page, right? The Skills USA, the robotics, right? A lot of these, yes, they have some final thing that they do, but if you place, right, then you qualify to go on to, it's usually, a lot of these things are nationals, right? It's kind of what it's called. And it's held somewhere, and then it's like, oh, are we gonna be able to go?
Yeah.
So I think fundraising to go, and now the season is extended longer, right?
Those last ones, we would need some more information about.
And the old timey language does reference national competitions,
Old timey
right?
chart, not like
Yeah, the language is fine.
I'm trying to use language we both understand.
old timey.
So,
So is
Yeah,
there
it
anyone
was.
then that you see is left out from the regular chart that might have that opportunity?
and that's why we added to it. So I looked over all the positions and tried to think about where would we have someone qualifying for something that's beyond the season that's not currently listed, right? The traditional sports. And then I started thinking about some of the clubs and I was like, well, yeah, speech and mock trial. Oh, well, what about Skills USA, right? What about youth legislature? Like these are also programs that we have where people might qualify to go on to a higher level outside of our district or our state or our local region or whatever it is, right? Which signifies the end of their regular season.
And are any of these things clubs?
Yeah,
Cause I'm thinking like DECA is not listed. DECA has an opportunity to do national, international competition. I was looking for racquetball, thinking about things my own kids did.
yeah. Racquetball is not a recognized position on the extra duty chart.
It's also a horse, replacement horse for himself. I don't see nothing there.
Correct. Not a
My kids
recognized
didn't do
position.
that.
Water polo?
Water polo.
Yeah. Those are.
No, it was part of it.
Yeah.
It's fundraising.
They just took out the girls and boys next man.
Yep.
Which is good.
Or we didn't include in Article 34, we're obviously looking at a 3-year contract still. We TA it, but that seems to be one that's like the last article we TA typically. I don't think either of us are looking for it other than a 3-year contract. So,
There's a sense of grandeur and emotional closure.
yeah, so. Okay, thanks for sticking with us through all that. So for us, to do is gonna be to work on this costing chart a little bit more where you guys have brought it, but if you have more, come knock on our door or text us, so we can keep working on this.
What time is?
Lunch is here.
Now.
Until noon.
Gonna be here at 9.
Even though it's still 7
Be here at
o'clock.
9.
Lunch will be here at 9. A little bit slow.
Back at 9, you're going. It's going. All right. One meeting. Oh, yeah.
No.
Easy.
All right, so we're gonna be looking at Article 24. Let's start. So at the beginning of A1, we are going with your strike of that language, and addressing it in C4. Like we talked about. Going to current contract. So. Then opening of schools, early release, late start, parental days. So, we are continuing with the language around will be identified on the work year calendar, just so that that our members are clear about which are collaboration, which are PD in collaboration, and which are member directed of those late start Wednesdays. And continuing down, we still see, as we expressed at the, in our back and forth on this article, earlier this afternoon or this morning, we really feel that it's super important for our members to have these control over the 3 of these additional Wednesdays. So our number has changed. Previously, it was, the district would have the proposal was 7. We moved off 2, so it's now 9. Early release and late start. We're still looking for the 3rd Wednesdays of September, October, and April, in addition to the February, May, last Wednesday of June. And the Wednesdays immediately preceding Thanksgiving, winter break, and spring break. And you'll see where we have moved some time to address the concern about buildings having time to do PD and other things around meeting with our members. So I'm having a hard time with the lights off. You're seeing everything that I got on this paper.
One of them.
What it essentially equates to, I mean, I guess we've all been around long enough.
That was great.
It's a 17-20 contract in terms of how the SNA days were structured, with the time being district directed at member directed. And some of that time was carved out and members were receiving more than half the time in the 2023 contract. So listening to what the district and particularly Brian said around, you're asking for more of these Wednesdays, but you're not giving us any of the time that we bargained away, right? So we're giving you some of that time back.
Can I ask you a question about that one, just how it's structured? So I see, so 3 of the days would would be 3 hours for district and then 4.5 for member directed prep.
Which is standard C&I day language. That's the language that has existed since C&I days were first negotiated.
So would it be all 6 that would be of that structure? Because then the other, the
All
different
all
provision,
of the days.
so all of the days, is kind of what that would say. Yeah. Okay, thanks, that's makes it clear.
Well, and those are the days that are just for elementary, right? Is the paragraph below?
So it should probably just say these days
Yeah.
instead of 3 of them.
Super.
Mhm.
And then the I was added last time,
which is high school.
so we just struck all.
Um,
So my team can probably tell, so what would happen on SNA days?
The time is split in our proposal. So currently it's not split. High school teachers get some additional preparation time. Which
Oh, I see
means,
what you're saying.
which means that the meeting time, right, the time that principals have during those 6-week non-instructional days, SNA, as they're called on the contract, goes back to being a 50-50 split. Lunch still comes out of the districts, it always has.
Yeah.
Right, but it would go back to members with 40 and administration with 3 hours and 20 minutes.
Is that somewhere else in the?
Yeah, it's down below here under student assessment days.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And it's this first opening paragraph. K8. One full day, whereas we've got the half day proxy.
Got it, okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Did you do the minute calculation on that? Give me a roughly, or do you want me to figure out?
It varies from grade level to grade level.
Yeah.
The elementary, high schools are different, right?
Right.
I think it's a bigger give at elementary than I believe it is at high school.
I knew.
Okay, I'm following you so far.
what are you talking about? Yes, okay, so, ready to move on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the triple I here, as long as the district maintains or the release late start time, we know you struck this. The first workday after winter break and after spring break are just times that a lot of other local districts have these. And it's really beneficial to students for the teachers to be prepared. It's beneficial to teachers to have the time coming off of a break to get their classrooms ready and to get their curriculum ready. It's a really good piece, and our members are really clamoring for more prep time to be ready for instruction and to be able to deliver quality teaching for the students.
Just a clarification, I mean, that would require a modification to Article 23, to the TA to Article 23, right?
That's
Because total potential teaching days would drop to 167 at the elementary, 171 at the middle.
Just this, out of curiosity, does this lessen work days for classified groups?
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't know what the classified contract says. They do like for this Friday, for example. Our classified folks working this Friday, students are not there. We're in meetings all day. The Friday coming up, which is the 6-week grade SNA day, right? Are they work? I don't know.
Yeah.
So
I think that many of them are not, so I'm just wondering the impact of,
food service.
right, just of our classified folks who are on certain contracts and they work when students are here. That be taking away 2 work days.
It could also give them time to do other things that they don't have to do. Student outreach, family work, scheduling.
Just depends on their.
It's not our intent.
I didn't think so, but I'm trying to, I have to think about all of it.
So we reworded, this C, to be from non-instructional Fridays, the heading for it is, now say alternative schedules. Otherwise, that piece of language is not different. The whole intent is just to find schedules that are work with our families and our community, that are more effective for students, more effective for our members. All right, we're continuing with the full day grading. That has not changed. In 3, under school instruction, we went ahead and struck and went back to current contract on $75,000 annually for that compensation for members for site counts to allocate. Thank you. Moving down to D. Well, no, there's a B that got struck.
Yeah, but.
But that's got it already to previous grade. Thank you. Members who perform pre-approved curriculum work, accepting the change to $35 an hour.
No cheers.
That's the reason.
Oh.
That means we were moved to B, daily and weekly prep time. That at the elementary level, the 300 minutes of the 525, that time is going to be scheduled for those members. So it's predictable and accepting that change. Striking. the 30
We understand what that means, right? So a teacher is going to have all 300 of their minutes scheduled out, showing these are the member uninterrupted. That's what schedule means, right? It's on a schedule.
On a master schedule or on the individual teacher schedule.
The yellow sticky note.
That is fine.
Does that happen
We'd have to
for,
laminate it.
like, elementary counselors? Does that happen for elementary counselors too?
Here's my honest response for counselors across the board. Counselors are contractually guaranteed all of the same things that any other member. Most of them never take advantage of it. So they're guaranteed a prep period, they're guaranteed an uninterrupted lunch, and they chuckle about having an uninterrupted lunch or a prep period. I don't think we've ever had a grievance over it. If it becomes an issue, I have a meeting with the principal and I'm like, hey, they need some of this time, and it's never been a.
And like SLPs and folks like that, who, do they create their own schedule? So do you put a block out of, here's my.
I do.
Okay, so any SLP could do
At
that.
least my time within the day. It's a little harder to do that for morning and afternoon when I don't know when my meetings are going.
Fed, as far as I know, across the board, they are told, hey, here's your load, here's the things that you gotta be doing. Go create a schedule so you can do all these things, and then they are given the freedom to create what schedule works for them. They check back in with their principal or supervisor, and there you go.
And a principal or supervisor can say, make sure whatever schedule you create has your contractually required prep time identified on that.
And if they have trouble doing it, then they would assist in the construction.
They should call Mark and.
What?
Okay,
And that's okay under this language.
Correct. Well, I don't see that being an issue. I don't think they would be trying to squeeze it into, student contact times,
Change.
right? Because they're not happening now in student contact times. So I don't see that happening
Oh, it's just now.
I'll make in the future either.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you remember which one that was, Cyrus?
Yeah, right, at 24.
All right.
Going back.
I know which part. We just realized that Cyrus is looking at our copy
Not the shared.
resides in our side's folder
Oh, not the
that you don't have access to, that is our working folder,
Mhm.
and then we copy it over to the one that's shared between us.
right.
So he made this change.
Right there.
But not on the document.
So that is in single I.
Thank you. In line of what?
B,
B,
Um,
big B?
24A1B. Little b, 24A1 little b.
Page 3.
Elementary.
Page, what are we on now?
We are on page 7 and going to 8.
Okay, so the bottom of 7.
Number 5. I'm sorry, I didn't on page 8.
Right, we moved away from contractually inserting the block schedule. We still would like to explore the block schedule and make it a priority for us to investigate things like the block schedule.
Or other schedules.
375.
Yeah,
That'd be counted. We're discussing in that.
absolutely. I mean, we've run multiple committees, we've put time and money
Mhm.
into exploring things. We got community input, we got student input, we got staff input. And both times it came back with the same answer. With a few potential tweaks, right? Like a skinny day, skinny Friday, maybe, or something like that, if you know what that means, is where you run all 8. That way, you know, every Monday is an A day, every Tuesday, like consistency of schedules, right? And we've recognized that it's a major change, you know, to go from teaching 40 to 50-minute periods to teaching, you know, an 80 to a 90-minute period is a huge change in terms of instructional practice. Teachers will all need to be retrained essentially on how to engage students for that longer period of time. You know, curriculum might have to be reworked, right? So it's not a, oh, we're gonna change that for next year, right? It's something that's gonna take some planning. But we hear what the district says around, the contract says we have to do X, right? So we're interested in talking about what that could be and what it could look like. We want to maintain a daily prep period for high school teachers, which I know is the struggle for a lot of the different schedules. We could not come up with an alternative schedule that went away from that, guaranteeing a daily prep period and still guarantee teachers a reasonable chunk of time so they can prepare every single day. We weren't able to be creative enough to come up with something, right? So, but we know, you know, the downsides of the current schedule, too many transitions, right? Huge load on kids going to that many classes every day, 8 classes when you have an advisor on Mondays. The periods are often short and there's a lot more we could do if we had 60 to 70 plus minutes with kids as opposed to 40 to 50 minutes with kids. Trimesters looks really nice on paper, but it opens up a whole other can of worms in a lot of other areas, right? So rather than try to solve the problem again, we feel like we tried a couple of different times. We're just back to current contracts, and I don't know how much longer, you know, we can keep justifying doing this besides it saves money, right? So
That's a big thing.
it is a big thing, but like the number of electives kids have is very low, right? A lot of our new programs that we're bringing in, they don't have anywhere to expand, right? Like we have initial level CTE programs, but if you're gonna truly build a career pathway, you need that advanced level. That all requires additional FTE, right? If you're bringing in additional FTE, then you're offering more sections. If you're offering more sections, right, then why are we not thinking about moving to a different schedule? So it's just, there was a lot to think about and consider. And again, didn't feel like we wanted to try and attempt to solve the problem again. We've come up with a couple of different creative ideas over the last few bargains, and none of them have been successful at the negotiation.
All right. Members, case managing students with disabilities. Was there, the only other thing that we did, was the uninterruptible. I think it was just a spelling fix. But the members case managing students with disabilities require an IEP. You struck for, we are adopting the changes in regards to 504 case management. So we stepped away from that change and adopted yours, that they have. These folks that are case managing students with disabilities require an IEP, 2 hours of case management, IEP mandated documents. This is all language that you agree to, that we are also accepting.
We made a change there. That's a substantial change in 6. And that we added during the student contact.
Not quite there yet, Mark.
Yeah, it's highlighted, so.
Yeah, because Cyrus moved it forward. So the next significant change, as Mark said, alluding to, is principals who will work with 504 case managers to ensure they have identified non-student contact time during the student contact day to complete the required paperwork and other necessary jobs.
It's our belief that's what you intended in your language. We just wanted to be very specific. Grievance guy over here was imagining horrible nightmare scenarios, similar to what you alluded to earlier, Brian.
Yes, the same nightmare.
Yes, yep. So we added a little bit more clarification to the language. We don't believe it changes your intent or what you were saying it's going to be.
And up top, keeping the member directed, and that's, to me, that's fine, but I don't.
For A, B, and C, we do not see any of that being change in practice.
It's not a change of practice.
Yeah.
It's more clarity. for-
It's, and that's it, yeah.
Yes.
So I have just a question about the 5B, 5C makes sense to me. The 5A, the thing I was getting a little hung up on with members, I think maybe this is just something that can be worked out in a conversation, is like, there's a lot of federally required tasks that EP case managers have to do. And there's maybe certain assessments they need to get, sort of those. I would hate for those to be considered admin directed things, because those should theoretically fall under case management time, right? And so I guess that was my only sticking point with that, is that it feels case management time feels a little different than like just a prep and planning period. That was my hesitation, but maybe in your mind, everything I said should fall into that.
I mean, my experience in practice and from what I hear from other members of SPED teams that I've been on is that's generally what they're using their time.
Right. Exactly.
Working on paperwork, meeting with students to do like assessments that they need to do to prepare for the IEP.
Yep.
And those kind of things.
So if they have to do that some other time,
Yeah.
right?
Sure, well, some of you might just get the data naturally through the interventions that you're doing. But sometimes you may need to do like some deeper assessment or assessment in an area where you maybe have suspicions that there's some need for extra support or a goal that's more specific to like this subsection of math or whatever. But need a little bit of data to show that like, yeah, actually the student does have a lot of trouble with that.
For me, Brian, I mean, as an administrator, you can expect your staff member to perform the required duties for IEP of 5. And you're holding them accountable for getting those things done. You're not directing them on, say you're gonna do this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my path. Like,
Absolutely.
we give you 2 hours to do that. you have to do those things.
Correct.
If you don't do them during those 2 hours,
You're
then I
gonna
guess
do
you're gonna do them some other time because they gotta get done.
So when we say member director, we're talking about the organization of it, the order they might do it in, what they might discover as, oh, I really would like to look a little deeper into this, or, yeah.
Makes sense. Cool, thank you.
Okay. I don't have to mention, we struck our changes to number 3 under workload. And now the reasonable schedules, number 4. This is the district's language. It's almost, it is identical to the language higher up that we just talked about. But instead of saying 4 case managers, it says counselors. So it's not just, I'm assuming we're making a distinction here for counselors specifically because there are other necessarily job duties for a counselor. For their reasonable schedule. Okay. So class size, student load, caseload committee, adopting the same language that you accepted, students with special needs. Adding that to the calculation. Getting rid of the strike in no changes due to financial, physical, space and time limitations.
Can I add, I appreciate the unstrike on that, and I hope people know that the intent is to try to find a solution in those meetings, not using that as the first, hey, sorry, we can't,
We can't do anything, we haven't.
Wondering if it might imply that for people who are just like reading their contract for the first time, by changing where it is in the list. Like maybe putting that as the last one would sort of at least give the implication of this is like the last resort of.
I had a similar thought.
We don't have any solution, so we're kind of stuck.
It's a really good idea.
Really good, yeah.
Or do we want to make that change?
I don't know.
Yeah,
We can do it.
you just change it.
What?
Right.
That's that whole copy. I will do it.
So that is 5E. And D 5E.
Thank you.
There you go. There's no change to our calculations for student contact personal compensation models. The documentation you brought did show a cost, but we didn't feel like it was a substantially prohibitive costs. Moving away from the block schedule and the $2.5 million ask for high school. I think the total with student contact thresholds was under $1 million. You added all up between special ed and elementary, and that's assuming you're just paying folks and we don't find ways to reduce those thresholds.
So that would be
So there's a
not,
cost. Yep.
well, but not reducing the class size, just paying folks.
So what this provides is people receive compensation when they go over that threshold. Obviously, when we look at what's reworking here, our order, if some of these pieces are applied, especially at the beginning of the year, you may be able to avoid some overages that currently, right? It's not something that's explicitly looked at. If you have, a building with 1.3s that are all, 26, 27, or a little bit large, maybe we look at this and we say, okay, what can we do? Are we doing split classrooms? Are we capping and busing?
We
Like,
see that.
I understand that.
Oh,
Understand,
I'm wondering.
right?
But so real life example,
Mhm.
you have 4th and 5th grade numbers that would allow for a split to help address. And we have often relied on our schools and our team to kind of have that conversation, like it can be done to meet a number. And a school chooses not to because of the impact of having a split. how do we see that kind of playing in this?
Again, for me, the thing that we keep talking about in our team is, it's not our intention to shuffle current FTE with, right? And I'm gonna take FTE from here and put it here. It's our intention that you would hire more FTE, you would increase FTE allocation to these buildings to lower the class sizes without raising them for anything. We are having trouble trying to figure out ways to write that, so we have not written that at all. The only thing we have, and there's a compensation model we could go over, but that would be our intent, right? Is that, okay, there are gonna be times when you have classes that are 2 kids over, and you're just going to pay them, right? And you're not going to hire a teacher and have tiny classes now. Other times it will make sense where, okay, we can take these classes, hire an additional FTE, and lower everyone's class sizes without raising any. That's our.
That didn't answer my question. Okay.
The buildings would not be deciding, because you're saying, I'm gonna ask my teachers how they wanna manage this. The only reason you would ask them that is you're not increasing FTE in your building. Correct. And it's not our intent to have buildings decide to increase class sizes in one spot, to lower them in another. It would be our intent to increase the FTE in it.
Lower the class sizes across.
Question, just thinking about that, when I think about space, so if it was that another teacher was hired, but we didn't have the space for another teacher, just be paying the overage.
There are gonna be times during a year where there's nothing you can do to shift the boundary. We would expect the boundary to be shifted during the year, right? In which case you're gonna have classes that are large. We're trying not to lock you into one solution. Right? This gives you options. Right? The rest. So if there is no physical space to put someone, gives you the option of just paying them, right?
I just wanted to, add, just to make sure we're all here. I think I said it earlier, but maybe not loudly enough, that it's 2.5 million, just caseload overages. I didn't calculate the general classes, but just for, I just want to make sure we all have the same number, and these are estimates based on last spring's numbers. So it was impossible to do it on now's numbers, because you can't, still getting those numbers.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure we have, as well as and adding, if we were to add counselors, it'd be a total of 49.5 licensed on an average. But if you're doing it like the way Mark was saying, it's just this one here, that one here, that one there, that's gonna go up significantly from 49 additional license.
Sure. And I would just preface, like, this is a proposal, right? So, you know, this number or that number or this breakout or that breakout, I mean, it's just a proposal. It's still our initial proposal. We have yet to see a counter proposal from the district, besides strike.
It doesn't include that.
Correct.
Okay,
So these are example calculations. Those are still there. Yep.
so we are at, F substituting. We switched up the language for this. Previously it said it shall not substitute except in the case of emergency. Switched it up so that it says may supervise classes only after every other reasonable option is met.
Moving away from substitute and supervise.
In emergency.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that gets at what we were saying. I mean, I just wouldn't want it to be taken to the extreme, like if it's like, hey, I gotta run to the bathroom, can you watch my class? Or, and it's like, have you exhausted every other possibility? Have you called Ryan? Yeah. So we're talking about
Now you would get to.
supervising for some amount of time, like beyond just a couple minutes. Yeah.
I do that all the time.
I imagine that.
Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, go-
it's
go
been
back.
called, they're on their way to the building.
2 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
And then, one.
For equity committee, yep. There was a question about moving it to 31. We, of course, expressed the difficulty of moving it to 31 of the extra complications that are involved with that, as well as it shifting how that committee gets formed. We would be open to, if your team really wants to see it move, possibly creating an appendix for it. But we changed up the language for administrator so that it says administrator approval and involvement instead of approval and oversight. So, yep, and then the compensation would be $35, which is an hour, which is the curriculum rate, but we are hesitant to add curriculum rates to areas that are not curriculum related.
Right. It's not. This is a curriculum work, right? So it shouldn't be referencing the curriculum.
Otherwise, everything else is the same. And we are not including the page 14.
Did it strike? Did it strike it?
Did we strike page 14?
So I wanted to clarify, I think I know the concern, but on your G1, the people that are involved in that, are doing something very specific towards that meeting.
Absolutely.
Compensation is over 35. So then the bottom one is an infinity group helping to strengthen the support of, both those are not part of, they're in an affinity group that's not necessarily doing.
One is like specific, two is district-wide.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Moving on to salary. The Jeffersons. My chair, you're barking into my chair. So what we're proposing, that we heard the district's concerns around costs and priorities, where priorities lie, and I'm hoping that we are giving you a clearer picture about what our members' priorities are, which is really what we are emphasizing. And we are focused on addressing our first year increase for cost of living would be 6%. That would be for this current school year. It would be 4% next year and 4% following year. Under salary placement, adopting that same language, but not including your proposal that the section shall apply to members hired for the 25-26 school year and thereafter. It's our belief that our intent always with that step one being eliminated as the piece that calculations should not have been applied using the step one in that calculation. So we would like to see the members who have been hired in the interim will also be moved up on the salary schedule to an appropriate level where step one is not used in their initial calculation.
But even that position would require some date in there, right? I mean, you're not suggesting that when Cyrus was hired, we shouldn't have used step one.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
It's referencing the expired.
When,
So the folks who were hired in 23, 22, no. 23, 23, 24,
Unless,
20. 20, 21. Did it go 20 to 23? Is that the last one? I don't have it on me.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. So all those folks that were essentially missing a step in terms of their calculation, they're gonna get 2 steps. Instead of,
are they gonna get paid back for those years? Like, I should have been on step
So we're not claiming this is some fault that we need to correct.
Trying to put them in the right place.
Yeah, we're just pushing them forward as we go.
So fix the step,
Yep.
no retro.
Yep, otherwise we have this group of people who are permanently in purgatory.
And I understand that, it's
So-
like two very different things, if we're gonna go back and pay them back, so yeah.
So,
So,
it's all laughing future costs.
But it feels like that, I was there.
Yeah, there was a group, there was a group.
Contract negotiated long before I was on the team.
Yeah.
I got skipped.
I wasn't part of the bargain, but I feel like I heard there was a conversation, a big conversation around the step one going away or whether it's gonna be used for. And those folks would have to help you. And what the conversation was, if it was to be more of a recruiting strategy for folks who had zero, and that's what they're doing.
It's folks that had experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, so folks that came in with, let's say, 2 years' experience, they put them on that spot. And anybody who came with 0 years' experience got to skip the first step
Mhm.
and they started in that spot. So we had this differentiation between people without any experience, people with some, and they were in the same place.
And our view on that is,
That
there was an incomplete bargain.
Strategy, increase entry level.
That was the intent of that, removing that first
I
step.
just had the unforeseen consequence.
That's not worked out at the table.
We didn't discuss it, it didn't come up. And so we had contention after, we had discussions,
Mhm.
we were trying to clear it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, well. C, which is previous teaching experience. We're sticking with the 2 years for 1 year salary advancement.
And that's all predicated on the district deciding to grant.
Yep.
For folks and this is mostly.
We may want to take out the word additional, because for some people, that might be the only credit or only experience they're getting. Right now, so the district may grant additional steps for initial salary placement. I wouldn't look at it as granting additional steps. I would look at it as recognizing non-teaching experience, right?
I would disagree with you, that's just what the current contract says.
But I read that as, Brian, so the first paragraph, right, so if you're a teacher with 3 years teaching experience.
Yeah.
In auto mechanics. You're going to get those 3 years credit.
Right.
You may get additional credit for your non-teaching experience.
There could be a scenario, right, where Gresham-Barlow is not the first teaching placement for that person, and they come with
I can see that.
experience.
Yeah.
And would this be, starting now, it wouldn't be going to,
Non-reg.
but we, for an auto mechanic teacher who may, are we as an HR team gonna have to help your folks and give them, or I guess we can choose that.
There is no, it's what currently
No,
happens.
after.
Yeah.
No CTE
Sorry,
purgatory.
gotta
It's okay.
waive of.
It's also late.
It's at the district's discretion.
All right, good, moving on.
Okay. So that is. National board certification, we struck our proposal for the additional 5% stipend for folks with the MA 23. And the national board certification. And also striking the doctorate members. Proposal in I and the longevity stipend in J. But yep, and we also struck K for salary advancement, participate in district workshops. We're holding on to, and renaming it I. The Professional Growth Academy, which was, just an MOU just last year. Yeah, we'd really like to bring it into and establish it and put the PGA handbook into it.
And just for your knowledge, Tim, if you don't know, Tim Collins is the.
Yeah, there is one course going on this.
That's the end of summer.
Thank you.
29? You're almost there.
I don't know.
So we looked at this year and we already with the district's contribution for insurance this year are at 100% for the pool. So we would like to move that money off of that first. We heard the district wanting to use solid numbers instead of an index against OEVB. And so the district's contributions for this year is the same as last year. And then increasing it by $50 for the 24-25 school year. Wait,
It's not.
There's some current contract that should be in there and showed strikes, and it got deleted, I guess. The current is 1475.
So you'd leave that as 1475, and then year 2 would be the,
Oh, it's current.
Current cap for 23-24 was 1475.
Yeah.
yes.
Current is 1475.
We worked off your numbers, that's why it ended up like this. 1475.
Where are you changing it to 25-26 is 1575?
Yeah, we'll have to we'll have to rework it. $50 in year 2, $50 in year 3.
0-50-50.
Yep, 0-50-50.
Got it.
In order to try and maintain 100%.
Anything else we need to change there?
We'll have to add back in the current conflict strikes, so we can see the.
Do you understand what we're doing?
Yes. 0-50. My fault.
Continuing with the addition of language that was agreed to the last time. Actually, in D, allow the long-term disability insurance, adding the language of allowed by OEBB, and the district providing all members access to the employees. It should have been part of it last time. Again, agreeing to the strike to the exploratory insurance committee and adding language, if any healthcare changes are required by law, we will discuss the changes and proceed.
It's essentially your proposal with the change to 0-50-50.
So now we're ready. The bottom of page 1 is the first significant change. And instead of BA 2 or BA 5, current contract is BA 2, we originally proposed BA 5. We moved to BA 4. Hearing the financial concerns. High school dance chaperones in E5 on page 2 would be $35 an hour instead of the $50 an hour that it currently is. And that's what you proposed. That's basically what our last proposal said. In 13, high school website and social media coordinator receive up to 10. That's just putting that, getting rid of the technology coordinator and inserting the website and social media coordinator in there, which was what you agreed with. The 10 additional days of high school counselors. And then for the specialty assignment stipend, all of A, which is the current contract, got struck, and changing it to any member, your language, but with some changes, any member performing work for a DLI school instead of any member working at a DLI school. Being bilingual is a requirement of the position shall be paid at 5% of BA step 4. We're continuing with BA step 4 work language throughout the entire thing, so that we don't have this differential between the stipends.
And when we talk about performing work for a DLI school, we're talking about folks that may not be their home base, right? As the DLI school, they may have a different location that's their home base, but obviously it's part of their job description. They need to be bilingual. They're supporting work and things that are happening at that DLI school. So we thought that language better reflected what we were trying to capture.
For the B, multilingual stipend, adopted your language in the first paragraph. And the multilingual members in the second paragraph, we got rid of the strikes. Adopted your strikes and just went with. Yeah, we just eliminated instead of having any struck language in there.
All of that is that we count this morning.
Yes.
Yeah, under multi.
Yes. it is.
Yeah, because we got the $2,000 stipend, so we took out the BA5,
Right.
it was in our original. Right, so
Good.
But you're not proposing 4? Be step 4 instead?
That's a flat amount.
Yeah, so the multilingual stipend in your proposal moved to a flat amount. We adopted the flat amount. But you'll see, yes, everything else in this article is now BA7.
4 instead of 5.
The reference, yeah.
Yeah, if it was paid out of a BA step, they're all now 4. in our proposal.
It should.
Yeah, they should be.
The certified special ed members working as a certified special education staff. Again, BA step 4. This is in C. After the multilingual stipend on page 4. And then certified special education teachers who qualify for one stipends in A or B.
Yeah.
Shall receive that stipend in addition to the special education stipend,
That's our continuing.
which is the same as your language.
Yeah, I mean, small piece, but it's an important word, right? Your language said may receive,
Yeah.
English shall receive. We didn't hear anything from you that said you didn't think this was going to happen. right? So we just tried to spell it out like other areas of the contract that said, yes, this is gonna
We changed your and or.
happen. That's true.
Did we say they're gonna call it cabin? And?
So they're not gonna be able to get both the multilingual and the DLI along with the specs. It's gonna
Oh, yeah, instead of A and B, you did A or B. Yeah.
Right.
That was a good edit.
Yeah, thank you.
Mark.
struggle.
Okay.
We continuing on down to, as you hit the table, you're gonna realize that we've gone ahead and stepped away from the executive committee. And struck that. So all of the table is current contract except for the two pieces. Robotics high school, which you agreed to, and then I did the clarification at the table about middle school OST coordinators. That we've added the language of per season.
Fits with other positions.
Angela and I had a little sidebar conversation about this. She pointed out that it earns more than an athletic director. However, in the last several years, the reason that we increased this stipend that we are here is the same that they are currently under a memorandum of understanding, and that largely has to do with the increased workload that has happened for these OST coordinators. On top of the fact that unlike an athletic director, they do not get an extra period during the school. So yes, they are paid. If they do all 4 seasons, they are paid more than an athletic director. But not everybody, my understanding is not every school, not every OST coordinator is running 4 seasons.
And they're
Not a
all the
good-
staff members.
As far as I know,
Yeah,
I mean, it's just, I mean, it's.
I'm certain.
I mean, they need access to all the things. You're sure they're all.
They were all staff members.
Like, it's not like a coaching, like a high school coach to me to work for the district.
Right.
It's someone that works for the district.
So
I think all of them are staff members.
either certified, but not just like parents or something.
After the table, there were a number of strikes. We agreed to most of those strikes except for the transportation students and the stipend for that. Cyrus, can you talk about that?
Yeah, so right now, if, like I coach tennis, boys tennis, and we're not a big team. We get a giant yellow bus every time we travel. And instead, we could all just climb on the little white bus, and I could drive us out to Sandy or whatever. And then we don't have to schedule like a pickup or a drop off or any of this kind of stuff. It's just sitting right there on campus. But in order to do this, I have to be certified to drive that. First student will only free up one of their bus drivers to do this certification on a regular workday. So that means they happen on like Friday grading days and stuff like that. And they just send out an email like, hey, whoever's interested in giving up their grading day to go get trained on the white bus for 8 hours, we'll sign you up, right? And I'm always like, no, that's silly, right? So what I rewrote, rather than just a flat stipend, which I thought was very, very simple math, is I just said, okay, if any members do it and they're losing, time, member directed time, grading time, prep time, whatever it is, they'll just put in for HCW for the loss of that time. And it's obviously their choice if they agree to do that training, but it makes certain sports a lot easier for the coaches to do. So there's an incentive there, right? And they don't have to give up their time for nothing. Right?
Could it be comp time instead of ATT?
Whatever. If the member wants.
You'd be open to that.
It's gotta be substantially cheaper
Oh,
than getting a bus.
yeah.
A lot cheaper than contracting out for a student.
Yes.
Times that you got transported a tennis team or
Yep.
a small golf team somewhere. You gotta get that big blue and yellow bus. And
Yep.
gotta pay for the driver for students charges a lot.
This little white bus requires seatbelt.
No,
Cause
But-
it's.
Cause it's small.
yeah. It can hold, 12 or 15 or something like that as a maximum capacity.
So lots of.
You can do it. Yep.
How do you volunteer?
They're fun, yeah.
But like right now, the list of people who are trained to drive those white buses is very small. And I believe that's because it's been very prohibitive for people to get trained on how to drive, right, get certified, so.
All right, the last piece is about the extended season. We held on to, we agreed with your strike of differentiating boys and girls soccer and boys and girls basketball. And water polo, just making it water polo, but we're continuing with the including cheer, dance, Skills USA, robotics, youth legislature and shows. Simply because these folks may have an extended season. We heard the need for additional research on these positions and what the extended seasons look like. But we didn't simply just want to walk away from it. And that, ladies and gentlemen.
With this, article appendix D in there, that's not something,
Eric said no.
okay.
Thank you.
And thank you.
So what I will say is thank you. It's all.
Thank you for your patience.
No, I think this.
Working out language is, it takes time, it takes information, it takes thought.
So I will say, thank you for your patience, as we're trying to get those numbers as exact. We do not have that correct right now, so my goodness, it's working on those, so I want to propose is that when we have the more exact numbers, that we send you and give you the option of whether this proposal still what you wanna do. I don't know how much of the numbers you were basing your proposal on. So I just want you to have, and then give you the opportunity to say, no, even with the new numbers, this is exactly what we wanna do, or not, if that makes sense. I just don't want to get to the point where we're going back and forth and then come back and saying, no, we were basing our proposal on a chart that was given at the very beginning that may or may not have the exact.
We did our best to try to figure out, what things, where there might have been disagreement or where the over costs, and, made movement. I don't think that we could say that we said we locked into that chart 100%. So,
I just want to be transparent and not have, I just want to make sure you have the accurate.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, we always know when we're marketing, especially something new, like in a class size caps, it's best guess in terms of the calculations. You can only go so far with your calculations. So we're, reducing our proposal to try and ensure that we can get some relief, some caseload class size relief, our elementary and our SPED folks and our specialists was a priority.
Yeah, thank you. I would echo Angela's. Thank you for that work today and coming back with the kind of proposal. I know that's a lot to do on those articles in particular.
All right.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, our next meeting.
Yeah.
Is October.
Seven.
What's that?
7.
Okay. Yep, October 7th and October 21st. The October 7th meeting is in the evening. I'm assuming.
We don't have a location, we're just trying to secure places.
Gordon Russell Middle School.
I don't know.
Meaning that high up on their list of priorities, but we need to get that.
And then the 21st is full day, and I'm assuming it's probably gonna be.
That's right.
It will be close.
Yeah. Ready for some heat tomorrow?
Heavy rain and maybe thunderstorms.
Saw that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you to your team. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for taking care of us.